If you are listening to your radio right now, congratulations. You are going to the free throw line for 2 shots. Welcome to 580 Sports Talk, everybody. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you on this Wednesday afternoon. Hold on. Got another whistle. Back to the line. Both teams in the double bonus. We've got 3 hours to go. We're both in the double bonus.
Man, you could have given me a heads up. I could have gotten us a whistle sound effect or something.
Too late. Already another whistle. There's a T as well. John Higgins is in the room today. We will be recapping Sunflower Showdown Round 2 coming up today. It was a fun game. It was a competitive, high-energy game. Yes, K-State was down by double figures for much of the second half, but it was never a complete blowout. They were never completely out of the game until the waning moments. Unfortunately, the officials wanted us to make sure that we knew that they were there as well. But we'll talk all about the game. A Kansas win over Kansas State, 90-78, drawing both teams level in Big 12 play at 6-3, and drawing the season series between the two programs level at 1 win apiece as well. We'll get to every angle of that game coming up here in just a matter of moments. Later on today, we'll also talk to Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com for our Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up as we talk all about this game from the K-State angle. We'll also get some thoughts on signing day as well. Quiet signing day for both KU and K-State, but we'll get Fitz's thoughts on that coming up later today as well. We'll also look into the Chiefs and Eagles matchup in the Super Bowl. I saw a very interesting piece today from our friends over at Arrowhead Report at Sports Illustrated about the things that the Eagles do well and their offensive tendencies and why they're able to make it work. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the Eagles do that concerns you. Not, well, A.J. Brown worries me. Well, Jalen Hurts worries me. No, what do they do that is actually worrisome for the Chiefs heading into this matchup? We'll get to that coming up in the 4 o'clock hour today. NFL news outside of the Super Bowl, Tom Brady retired. Again, this time, though, no fanfare, no big essay, as he put it. No, why didn't he say more about Bill Belichick? No, none of that.
At least he had the self-awareness to say, you only get one goodbye, like long-winded essay.
Yeah.
Tom Brady has, for all of the things that he is, always been and has become more, I think, as his career has gone on, very self-aware.
Yep.
So I give him some credit for that. But, yeah, I will believe Tom Brady is not going to play in the 2023 NFL season when it's week 1 and he's not on a roster. And maybe even then I'll be thinking, well, when some contender gets the quarterback hurt, maybe they'll give him a call.
So we are going to talk about that and how that could legitimately impact some other moves around the NFL. I think it's going to impact my favorite team quite a bit because they have a certain quarterback who has plenty of ego as well. So we'll talk about that coming up a little bit later on in the show. Plenty of headlines to get to. That'll come up in the 5 o'clock hour. We've got our first February What Is Wrong With You coming up today after the meat suitcase. I thought of the sirloin savior in the shower this morning. I was trying to come up with other alliteration for our meat guy.
Bootleg brisket.
There you go. After he won the month of January, what a story. That's an all-timer one way or the other. We need a museum, like for the non-winners. And this one might win the year.
Yes,
who knows?
I forget who it was in the YouTube comments yesterday called the shot and said that one's going to win 2023. That one's going to go wire to wire, be our second wire to wire champion after the grilled cheese standoff in the inaugural year of the What Is Wrong With You Tournament of Champions. And you know what? They might be right.
So funny.
It gets funnier.
It
honestly.
really does. By the way, he got arrested 70 times. So we've got our first What Is Wrong With You for the month of February coming up. We'll play some One Gotta Go. And bottom of this hour, we've got our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week for this week. Brooklyn DeLeye, a senior all-sports superstar for Washburn Rural. I just want to take this moment to editorialize briefly. More and more, and this isn't just locally, this is everywhere, like student athletes who have plans to go play Division I sports are, maybe specializing their final year of high school, or they're just not playing anything, period, to stay healthy and all that. And I totally understand it. Brooklyn is playing 3 sports this year. Our male athlete of the week last week as well, Joe Otting, also a 3-sport athlete, going to Kentucky volleyball, which won a national championship within the last 4 years, and Notre Dame football, which is Notre Dame football.
Right.
And those are 3-sport athletes. So huge shout outs to our last 2 athletes of the week. We'll talk to Brooklyn coming up later on in this hour. As always, you are welcome to be a part of the program as well. Hit us up on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. You can also hit us up in the comment section on YouTube as well. Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube channel. We would love to get your take on last night's game, KU versus K-State in the Sunflower Showdown. KU picks up the win. Let us know your thoughts on the game, biggest takeaways from the KU perspective, K-State perspective as well. Also, by the way, while we're talking YouTube, the post-game recap video is up on YouTube as well, live at the time from Allen Fieldhouse as they were starting to clean up. I think, though, this time I did it earlier than usual, so I didn't have to go do it in a stairwell. And I think only one person cleaning up trash walked behind me, so I thought that was a pretty good number. They want to get in and out. I get it.
Yeah.
Long game. You want to get home.
Long game, long night. Everybody wants to get out of there. Yeah. Yeah.
So you can go see that on YouTube right now. And, of course, you can be watching the live stream as we are on live right now. Let's get to that game. Sunflower Showdown, KU defeats K-State 90-78. And if you remember, the first time these two teams faced off, K-State got out early. They got out pretty big early. I think it was, 27-12 midway through the first half in that first matchup. And they controlled the majority of the game. KU fought back late first half into the second, went back and forth into overtime. KU got in major foul trouble. K-State comes away with the win. In this game, it was back and forth early. Both teams traded shots. And in fact, it was actually kind of a sloppy start to the game. I think K-State started 3 of 14. KU started 3 of 15 or something in that area. They were both hovering around 30%.
There were a lot of turnovers early on. Yeah.
Yeah. 5 of 15, not 3 of 15. Anyway, a lot of turnovers, very sloppy. Then KU, at about the 14-minute mark, took advantage, never relinquished it. And the biggest reason for that, on the KU side of things, was they were just making shots. They went 8 of 16 from 3 in the first half. If KU is going to shoot anywhere between 40 and 50% from 3, you're not beating them. Unless you also have a nuclear day shooting the ball, you're not beating this Kansas team if KU is shooting that well. Part of it is good shot making by Kansas. Part of it, some lackadaisical defense by K-State. Not that that's a K-State staple, but I even saw some people I know who follow and support K-State who said, maybe not our best effort out there for parts of the game. Hell, our friend John Kurtz, formerly of K-Man in Manhattan, he even said KU won the play hard chart tonight, which is a very funny comment.
Yes, it is. And it's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The urgency on the closeouts just wasn't there for Kansas. And part of me understands, like, if you're K-State, you will live with any possession that ends with DeJuan Harris shooting a three-pointer, or you will live with any possession that ends in Kevin McCullough shooting a three-pointer, because neither of those two are particularly great shooters. But Harris makes his first 3 of the night, a wide open 3, and McCullough makes a couple in the game, and Harris ends up making 2 in the game as well, makes 1 late. At some point, you have to challenge that a little better, because K-State, as is, they're not a great rim protecting team. Mm-hmm. And we saw that again kind of manifest itself in this game. Even like David Gasson helps them in some ways as their center, but he is not. Don't get him confused with like a Musa Cisse or like a prime Udoka Azubuike or anything as a rim protector. Kansas State does not have great rim protection. So if it's going to be easier for teams to score on you at the rim, you have to make it harder to score everywhere else. And that includes closing out on three-pointers with a bit more urgency than K-State did, I think, certainly in the first half.
And the first half is really what decided the game, because I know K-State never really got much momentum in the second half. It was a double-digit game for most of the contest. Now, part of that was also because the officiating was just a calamity, and there's no way to have flow in the game, really, for KU or for K-State, because KU got way sloppier in the second half, but also it's hard to put together a run and put a game away when the other team's going to the foul line constantly and you're going to the line constantly.
Yeah, and the flip side of that, the flip side of that for Kansas State is if they could never put together a run like it's 6-0 or 10-2 or a run that would have gotten them back within single digits, maybe caused the crowd to get a little nervous, maybe caused KU's players to feel like, gosh, we can't put these guys away. They could never go on that run as a result of so many whistles and so many fouls.
And the other stat that jumped off the page to me immediately, because it has been in the games K-State has lost in Big 12 play this year, turnovers have been, in my eyes, bugaboo number one. I know the Iowa State game rebounding was what a lot of folks pointed to, and we talked a lot about that. So maybe the turnover issue came secondary as the biggest issue in that game. But go back to TCU. The Frogs were making everything, but also they turned K-State over an unbelievable number of times and just kept turning it into points over and over and over again. That was a major issue for K-State, was the ball security. Last night, if you just looked at the box score and you said, well, 13 turnovers isn't that bad. Like, it's not a great number, but you can live with 13, especially in a low turnover game. KU only had 22 of them. Again, so many fouls, or only 9 of them for 22 total.
Right.
Because there were so many fouls, so many dead possessions. K-State turned it over 10 times just in the first half, leading to 15 points. That's 1.5 points per turnover by K-State. You can't live with that. You're going to get killed in the Big 12 with that kind of number. And that's why by halftime, honestly, with that kind of disparity, it sort of felt like K-State was already at a tipping point.
And that's a trend that keeps repeating itself for Kansas State, is that their turnovers turn into points.
Yep.
We talked about that in the TCU game. We talked about that after the Iowa State game, where what did they have? Like 2 points per turnover?
Mm-hmm.
We think we figured it out too. Yeah. It was 2 points per turnover for Iowa State in that game. The turnovers that Kansas State commits, more often than not, they are live ball turnovers. And live ball turnovers, not that there's a good turnover, but value-wise, you'd rather have like a 30-second violation or throw the ball out of bounds or travel or commit a player control foul than give the ball to the other team and let them start a break, because those are the turnovers, those live ball turnovers that end up turning into points. In Kansas State, like you said, 13 turnovers, you live with that number at the end of the day. I think especially against a team like KU, who's really good defensively, but if so many of them are the live ball variety and the other team is taking advantage of scoring 1.5 points per turnover in the first half, yeah, that puts you behind an 8 ball.
And look at the two teams, again, specifically, that has been the biggest problem against. Now, KU and TCU want to turn you over. They want to create that havoc defensively. But what is TCU really good at? What is their best element offensively?
Transition.
KU, what does KU always want to do offensively? Get out in transition.
Yeah. And K-State does too, but because KU only turned the ball over 9 times, and because they shot so well, you don't have, because there are other ways to get in transition. It's not just turnovers, right? A lot of times it's rebounding, long rebounds in particular. And the way that KU shot from distance and the way that KU shot overall, and the way that KU took care of the ball last night, K-State never got to get into that transition. They had a lot of half-court possessions. And KU makes it really, really hard on you in the half court, even without a great rim protecting presence themselves. They're very athletic and they can switch every ball screen, and they're so together, so connected on defense because they're really well coached on that end. Bill Self puts a great deal of emphasis on it. So they are always hard to score on in the half court. And Kansas State didn't get quite enough of those run out possessions. And then when they did late in the game, when it got a little sloppy, they didn't finish. I mean, how many breakout possessions they have, 2-on-1s, 3-on-1s, where they couldn't make a layup. They just couldn't get the ball through the cylinder. They missed way too many shots at the rim. Of all of the things that will frustrate Kansas State coming out of this game, and I think there are quite a few things, they will feel like, man, if this had been different or if that had been different, it's a very different game. I think you look at their shooting at the rim, their inability to make layups or even dunks. I mean, Keontae Johnson missed a dunk contested, but still, dunks the highest percentage shot in basketball, and they missed one of those. That will be, I think, what frustrates Kansas State the most coming out of that game is if you make a few of those in the second half, maybe that would have helped them put that even a 4-0 or 5-0 run together that would have gotten them over that 10, 11, 12-point hump. If they could have gotten within 8 or 7, made it a 3-possession game, it starts to feel a little bit more manageable, a little bit more doable. Instead, KU just kind of kept them at arm's length, like putting your arm on top of somebody smaller's head, and just they're throwing their arms at you, but they can't get to you.
Like the scene in Spaceballs.
Yes, precisely. Yes, that's exactly what I was going for.
The Schwartz fight. There was a moment late in the game, the 2 plays that really decided it. And the first one, right out of the under 4-minute timeout, DeJuan Harris gets open, right corner, hits a 3-pointer. That was the biggest shot of the game. And I think at that point, you could feel it in the gym. I was sitting next to CJ Moore, who we'll talk to tomorrow. You could just tell that was it. That was the kill shot. And then
even not being in the gym, that was the point at which I turned to Abby and I said, that feels like the dagger right there.
Because Harris kind of has that effect offensively. Like, it sort of feels like because he doesn't shoot the ball all that often. And, well, especially going into this season. And when he makes them, it just feels like it is a big deal because he's not a three-point shooter. That really felt like the moment that pretty much put the nail in the coffin. And then the next trip down for K-State, they missed 2 layups in a row on the same possession.
Yeah.
You can't have that. You cannot live with that. The thing that stood out to me the most in the post game as it pertains to K-State's strategy for this game, both Marquise Noel and Jerome Tang, because K-State spoke first, then the KU guys, both of them mentioned that the game plan was stopping Jalen Wilson. Or not stopping him, but slowing him down. Wilson didn't have a great night shooting the ball in terms of efficiency. What did he end up being? 5 of 14, I think. I've got it right in front of me. Yeah, 5 of 15 from the floor, although he was 4 of 9 from 3. So, yeah, he went 1 of 6 on 2s in the game. Still ended up with 20 points. He was good at the free throw line, had 8 rebounds as well. And Noel straight up said, yeah, the game plan was to slow Jalen Wilson down. They just had other guys who stepped up in his play, DeJuan Harris, Kevin McCullough specifically. Jerome Tang said, well, hey, I mean, we kept Wilson away from 38 points. Like, that was a positive for us because he put up 38 in the loss for KU at Bramlage. But to me, and I think KU felt the same way, and when this was brought up to Jalen Wilson, he sort of shrugged it off. He almost seemed irritated by it. He said, well, I don't need 38 for us to win. KU, and I've said this a handful of times, you heard me repeat this and bang on this drum, KU is at its best when Jalen Wilson can win, or KU can win when Jalen Wilson's just good. When they've got a good night on both ends from Kevin McCullough. When DeJuan Harris is getting downhill or making a couple of shots. Grady Dick wasn't even great, but he was fine enough. KJ Adams was good enough. They got really good production from the center in general. Uday had another really good game, I thought. He's starting to come into his own. But I thought that was an interesting strategy that it was, we'll just slow him down. Or that was the main number one thing. Because honestly, it felt like it worked out better last time when everybody else was struggling and Wilson had to shoulder the entire load. So I thought that was an interesting tactical approach.
I think any team, if you ask them against Kansas going in, what are you trying to do on defense? The first thing they're going to say, well, we can't let Jalen Wilson go nuts on us. And K-State had let Jalen Wilson go berserk on them at Bramlage Coliseum. So I think part of that is just the acknowledgement of he's the superstar. He's the main man. And we've got to limit his touches. We've got to make it hard for him to score. But the point you're making is correct, that KU got, and we talked about this at length previewing the game yesterday, complementary scoring, secondary scoring. KU got that in a way that they did not get that at Bramlage 2 Tuesdays prior. They got it from Kevin McCullough. They got it from DeJuan Harris, who was really terrific. That was a super game from DeJuan Harris, probably as good an all-around game as he's played this season.
Yep.
Everybody who came off their bench scored. Like they got
everyone.
Yeah, they got a hoop from Uday. I thought Pettiford was really good. I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
It looked like he maybe tweaked something there toward the end of the game, and I hope he's all right because I thought he gave him some juice. Yes, Fu came out, hit a 3. Zach Clements.
I thought that was Clements' best game other than Oklahoma.
Yeah, like he looked useful, and that sounds really mean when I just say he looked useful, but like you could see like what he can do well, where he has an ability to switch and he can guard like that stretch 4 or small ball 5 really well. And he can help you space the floor and create more room for your guys to operate in the half court.
Looked more comfortable in the paint too, because he missed the free throw on the and one try, but go back to the game at Bramlage Coliseum. He got a ball in the post with a minute left in that game. And I cringed on my couch watching that. It ended in disaster. He didn't look super comfortable with it. Got knocked away by Marquise Noel. That was the big steal at the end of the game. Looked a lot more comfortable in the post this time, which granted comes with playing more. And he's had to play more because KU had so many guys banged up. They just have to get people in there. But 19 points from the bench, that'll fly if you're KU. You got 20 from Wilson, 18 from Harris, 16 from McCullough, 19 from the bench. It's going to be hard to beat KU if they're getting that kind of production.
Yeah, and K-State didn't quite have that secondary scoring. Desi Sills had 7, but they all came from the free throw line. David Gasson had 10. Ish Massoud only had 2. Tyke Green didn't score. Bebe was barely out there. He and Tyke were barely out there and didn't score. So unlike that first meeting for K-State, you didn't have that complementary scoring, which if they had, that would have complemented a strong game from Keontae Johnson. 20-plus again for Noel, even if it was an inefficient 20-plus. He didn't shoot it great, only 3 for 11 from behind the arc. Had some good looks that didn't go down. But if they would have had maybe just a little bit more of that complementary offense. They could have hung tough. And a lot of the complementary offense they did get wasn't really in the flow of the offense. It was at the free throw line because both teams were in the double bonus in the second half with 12 and a half minutes to go, which is a disgusting sentence. It feels gross in my mouth as I am saying it out loud.
47 combined fouls, 71 free throws. It was brutal, man.
Revolting. And it became part of the storyline of the game. Like, we've got a text about it from the 402 on the Big O Tires text line, talking about accountability for officials, which, I mean, this is college basketball. It is what it is. Like, they don't have to answer questions. It's not the NFL. It's not the MLB. There's no pool reporter talking to the official. It's just not going to be that. But
John Higgins works the game every single day of the week.
Right.
Which is insane.
I forget who it was that said truckers are required to get more sleep than John Higgins has. Like, seriously, Higgins is out there, like, he's had 4 hours of sleep in 3 days, and he's trying to officiate this game. It's just, consistency is what you want at the end of the day. Whether they're going to call it tight or they're going to let the players play, consistency is what you're looking for. And you want to be able to confidently, as you're watching a game, say, oh, yeah, that is a foul. Or, oh, yeah, that is not a foul. And you just can't do that on a night in, night out basis watching the Big 12. And Jerome Tang griped about it in the post game. He got a technical foul. And he said that at the time that he was upset, he felt like they were getting a bit of a raw whistle, which, welcome to Allen Fieldhouse, Jerome. I mean, you've been in the conference long enough. You know what this is. But I do think that it's unfortunate that's even part of the storyline. It didn't affect the outcome, but it affected the game in the sense that it was not very enjoyable to watch. You know, when it's a parade of guys to the free throw line, that's not really good basketball. And unfortunately, a lot of college basketball games, a lot of Big 12 games look like that.
Yeah, it sucks, man. It's a good product. And I saw someone, I think it was Ryan Gilbert from Go PowerCat, said he thought the whistle was favoring KU early. Tang got the technical. It might have swung actually a little bit in a different direction. And then in the second half, I mean, it was just a disaster in the second half. And it sucked because that game had so many good stories going into it, had multiple star performances. By the way, that was my first time seeing Keontae Johnson in person this year. He's a dude, man. He is just incredible shot maker. He reminds me a little bit in terms of his mid-range game of probably the best mid-range player in the NBA, and that's DeMar DeRozan, Chicago Bull, who focuses more on the mid-range because Keontae's not a huge three-point shooter. He can play above the rim a little bit, although he's missed a dunk 2 games in a row, which is strange. He's awesome. I loved watching him play in person because I've seen Noel plenty of times, and he's obviously a great player, but
he's a savvy player. He's strong.
Yeah.
Like, he had one play, and they broke it down really nicely on the TV broadcast. It was a mid-range jumper he hit over Jalen Wilson, and Jay Billis highlighted it, and I thought it was really neat the way that he showed how you use your body to create space without fouling the other player. Like, you don't have to dip the shoulder and knock the dude down, then you get called for an offensive foul. But you can use your upper body if you're being guarded tightly. You can use your upper body, get a little bit of a nudge, create just enough space to be able to step back and shoot the jumper over a taller player and then knock it down. Like, he's got that savvy and that know-how to get his shot, to get his offense. And I thought he played a strong game. It was unfortunate that he and a lot of his teammates and a lot of guys on the other team spent the whole game in foul trouble. I mean, it makes it hard to watch. It makes it not really enjoyable at the end of the day to watch a game where what they end up being. I'm not looking at the box. 71 combined.
71
combined free throws. That's
36 for K-State, 35 for KU.
And honestly, I mean, shoot, K-State was 31 and 36 at the line. That probably had a part in keeping them in it.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
But when you're going to the line that often, the flip side of that is, and we talked about it, there's no flow to the game. So you don't really feel like you have a chance to get the stop and the score and the stop and the score that you need to really start whittling away at a double-digit deficit, which is what K-State faced for the better part of the second half.
Let us know your thoughts on last night's game. Hit us up on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. That's where you can chime in the comment section. And, of course, as always, hit us up on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. We'll talk more about this game coming up in the 4 o'clock hour with Tim Fitzgerald in our Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. Later on this hour, we've got our high school athlete of the week. But first things first, we'll take our first break of the show, come back, play One Gotta Go on 580 Sports Talk.
gotta go.
It's time for our weekly round of One Gotta Go here on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. All right, Dan, I've got two here for you, so I'm going to give you the pick. You want option A or option B?
I want option B.
Option B. All right. Yes, I'm so glad you picked this one. Which member? This is a reverse One Gotta Go, so you got to pick one of the four. This is a positive One Gotta Go.
Gotcha.
Which member of the main cast of 80 for Brady would you most want to hang out with? Jane Fonda, Sally Field, Rita Moreno, or Lily Tomlin?
Honestly, probably Jane Fonda.
I can see that.
Probably Jane Fonda. I know that there is a certain generation of American male for whom Jane Fonda is not super popular. And I want to get that out of the way real quick, that I understand where you're coming from on that. But Jane Fonda is a big-time sports fan, I believe. Obviously married to Ted Turner for a long time. I remember, like, the first time I ever heard of Jane Fonda, it was her and Ted Turner sitting front row at all those Braves games in the early 90s I was watching on TV, doing the whole chop thing and all that. But no, she's a for real, like, Atlanta sports fan. And I feel like it'd be fun catch a game with Jane Fonda.
I believe that. My pick is easily Sally Field. Sally Field rules. Phenomenal actress. A lot of fun. She would be my easy pick. I saw somebody tweet today a picture of Tom Brady with the whole cast, and it said how Tom Brady spent his last day as an active NFL player. I thought, damn, that sounds fun. This is a great group.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
For the record, option A was which of these four quarterbacks with some sort of issues around them would you want playing for you next season? Tom Brady was on that list.
Yeah, that's less fun.
Yeah,
that's less fun to me. All right, this One Gotta Go has 5, and it's the 5 teams within a game of each other as we hit the halfway point of the Big 12 men's college basketball season. Texas at 7-2, Kansas State, Iowa State, TCU at 6-3. One of those teams is probably not going to win the league. I don't think we're going to have a 5-way tie for the conference championship, although you can't totally rule it out at this stage. Anyhow, one of those teams got to go. One of those teams with no chance in your mind to win a share of the conference championship.
See, I think it's got to be Iowa State for a couple of reasons. One, and this is less analytic and more just feel, that loss the other night to Texas Tech feels like it could be a spiraling kind of loss. Like, how do you lose that game, man?
Especially coming on the heels of getting run off the floor on Saturday in Columbia in the SEC Big 12 Challenge.
Like, that should have been the bounce back game, and instead they had a nuclear meltdown. Now, you could make the counter argument that, look, they already beat them by 34 the first time they played. They just, freaky stuff happens sometime, they'll move on. But again, off the heels of that loss to Missouri, you have an all-time worst of the year kind of meltdown against a pretty bad Texas Tech team, who I thought would be a lot better, but is not at all. I mean, you've probably got to start asking questions about what Mark Adams' future looks like at Texas Tech. That just feels like the kind of thing that has really hurt Iowa State in the past and can hurt them again. Additionally, I just don't love their roster. I really don't. Gabe Kalsher is an awesome player. I'm not a huge Caleb Grill guy. Oshuniyi is a nice player. Is he a true difference maker in the post on a regular night in, night out basis? I don't really think he is. I don't think they have enough of those guys. Look at all those other teams in that group. They've got guys who can be difference makers. Even if I'm not the biggest Marcus Carr fan, he's got the ability to do that. KU has one or two of those guys. K-State, we know, has a couple of those guys. I think even Baylor has a guy or two who's like, I think Adam Flagler is that kind of guy. I just don't see it for Iowa State. Maybe Kalsher, but outside of that, I just don't love that roster composition. I think they've got to be the one out.
Yeah, that's a good argument. Probably the same one I would make. I would throw in, for devil's advocate purposes, Texas. We've talked about their schedule. It's about to get a whole lot tougher here down the stretch. They still need to play Kansas twice, for instance. And I still think it's going to be tough for them to navigate the second time through with essentially an interim head coach in navigating the second time through the league. And also, I know TCU won last night against West Virginia. West Virginia couldn't throw the ball in the ocean from three-point land. If West Virginia shoots a normal three-point night for them, especially how they had shot the ball lately coming in. They probably win. I don't know when Mike Miles is coming back. Eddie Lampkin played 8 minutes last night, but he's still hobbling around. They got to go to Oklahoma State, to Kansas State. Then they got Baylor. Then they got to go to Hilton. Those are their next 4 games. How many of those is Mike Miles going to get to play in? How many of those do they win without him? So I have some questions about TCU as well. But also, I spent a good 10 minutes yelling about how unserious Iowa State was on the show yesterday. So they are obviously my pick.
How did that go yesterday?
I had fun. I'm more fun than Lena Grill thinks I am. Let me tell you that right now.
What did she say to you?
She said I sounded fun.
Oh, okay. What is she, 17?
Right? Like, ooh, interesting clapback, Ms. Grill. I didn't say anything bad about your son, who actually played awesome.
Yeah, right. Like, he's the one who nearly kept them alive.
I promise you don't need to defend the honor of Gabe Kalsher. His mama can do that.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I mean, they're a good team. They try really hard, and I give Otzelberger a lot of credit because they play hard as hell for him, and he is intense, and it works. I just, like, if you gave me all of those rosters stacked up next to each other, they, I think, easily come in last. Like, by a lot.
Yeah, I'm with you.
With that, we've got to take another break here on 580 Sports Talk. When we come back, our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week, Brooklyn DeLeye from Washburn Rural. That's coming up on 580 Sports Talk. Time for our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week here on 580 Sports Talk. And we've got, I think it's fair to say at this, I always love to gas up our athletes, but I think it is easily fair to say we've got one of the best all-around athletes in the state of Kansas this year. Brooklyn DeLeye from Washburn Rural Girls Basketball is our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week. How about this? 15 plus points per game, over 8 rebounds per game on the season. And due to some injury concerns for Washburn Rural, she has had to take on an even bigger load, both offensively and defensively, and is doing so in tremendous fashion like she has for several years for the Junior Blues now. And oh, by the way, she is also the 2-time reigning Gatorade Kansas Volleyball Player of the Year. Just a couple of weeks back, she signed her national letter of intent to go play college volleyball, in fact, at the University of Kentucky, which just a couple of years ago won the national championship in women's volleyball. Got to talk all about that and so much more with our athlete of the week, Brooklyn DeLeye from Washburn Rural Girls Basketball. Our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week, it's safe to say, is not just one of the best basketball players in the Centennial League or in the city of Topeka, but in the state of Kansas, an all-state basketball player. Her name is Brooklyn DeLeye, a reigning national champion in Class 6A for the Washburn Rural Junior Blues, and she is having a phenomenal senior season for Washburn Rural, over 15 points and over 8 rebounds per game on the year. And Brooklyn, I wanted to start right there with just how well you and your team have been playing as of late. 9-4 on the season. I know you guys did fall in overtime to a really good Blue Valley Northwest team on Tuesday night, but overall, for you and for your team, what do you make of the way you've been playing recently and this hot streak that you in particular have been on these last few weeks?
Yeah, definitely. I know, especially since I'm a senior this year, like that just comes with a whole different role for me. And I just try to do the best I can for the team. I mean, we each have our own roles on the team, and everyone has to pick up, especially when you lose a great player like Zoe Canfield. I'm pretty sure everyone heard she tore her ACL, so we've kind of had to cover her role too. But I try my best, just like play with my team, and they help me out as much as possible as well.
You mentioned how things are a little bit different when you step into that senior role. Now, you've been a major contributor for the Junior Blues for several years now. So how different is this season? Is it more of a leadership thing? Is it more of a lead by example and production kind of thing? How has this year really changed because you're in that senior role now?
Yeah, I honestly think it's both. I mean, when you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, you kind of look up to the older ones. And especially like those younger girls, you don't really know much about the program yet, or like the coaches and the way they try to coach. And so it's just definitely a learning experience. And obviously I've had 4 years to learn and like shadow kind of some of the top players we've had here. And so now that I'm a senior, I kind of get to exemplify that for those younger players as well. I mean, we're a young team this year, but I think the seniors are doing a great job on like letting them know what they need to do and like what we have to accomplish this year.
Our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week is Brooklyn DeLeye, a senior standout for Washburn Rural Girls Basketball, averaging over 15 points and over 8 rebounds per game on the season for the reigning state champion for the Junior Blues. In terms of your game in particular, Brooklyn, what are some of the things you've tried to work on? Because at this point in your career, and we've gotten to see you a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, you've really developed an inside game along with a three-point shooting game. The defense, rim protection is obviously a big deal as well. What would you say going into this year is what you focused on improving the most?
Honestly, just working more on the inside. I know I'm the tallest player on our team, but I'm not as strong as like some of the other posts you see in the state of Kansas. I mean, throughout my 4 years, I've always been a decent shooter around the perimeter, but I've really had to step it up on my inside game and like trying to be that rim protector as well.
You mentioned that this is a younger team for you guys at Washburn Rural, but there are still a few of you that are seniors or juniors who have been around this program for a long time and have been through a lot of success and a lot of big moments together yourself. You mentioned your teammate Zoe Canfield earlier. Mariah Lutz is another player as well, and that's just scratching the surface of it. What has that relationship been like for you with those girls who you have played with for so long? How close is that relationship now since you've been playing together and have been teammates for so many years?
Yeah, no, especially I think we're like a really tight team. I mean, as far as it dates back, like we haven't played together, like not just Washburn Rural. We played together in club, in middle school, and like even our early years of basketball. Like that's the only team that I've known is just those girls. And it's just been incredible, like experience a state championship, like you said, and just like all our accomplishments that we've made. And it's just really surreal.
I do have to ask about state championship aspirations because obviously you guys were the champions a year ago with a tremendous run down at the Roundhouse in Wichita to pick up that 6A crown. Now you're back for another year. You've got multiple pieces back from a year ago, the same head coach, obviously, in Kevin Bordewig, you a core part of the team once again. Do you and do your teammates think a lot about getting back to Wichita, getting back to a state championship, or are you still trying to take it day by day and not focus too far ahead?
I mean, obviously we have that in the back of our minds. It'd be really cool to defend the state title, especially like you said, we won it last year, but we do have to work on ourselves every single day in practice. We've had a couple losses this year that have been big for us, but we just take those as like learning experiences on what we need to get better at. And like I said, we do have a very young team this year. Last year is kind of different. We had a lot of seniors that might not have been starters, but they still were great role models on the sidelines. So it's just been kind of a different thing this year, but I'm pretty sure everyone knows what our goal is ultimately. So that'll be cool to see what we do at the end of the season.
We're speaking with Brooklyn DeLeye, a senior for Washburn Rural Girls Basketball, our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week. Brooklyn, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk at least a little bit about your volleyball career at Washburn Rural as well. We'll get to the future and what that holds and all the excitement that comes with that in a moment. But you're the two-time reigning Gatorade Kansas Volleyball Player of the Year. That is not something that happens all that often to win that honor back-to-back years. Take me back to this senior year. You guys won a state championship in 6A on the volleyball court as well. What are some of the things that really stand out about your senior campaign at Washburn Rural, your individual honors, as well as that run to a championship?
I mean, honestly, just the state championship was just probably the most unbelievable experience that I've had. Obviously, volleyball being my main sport, like basketball last year, winning that was just surreal as well. But just finally getting that championship in volleyball was just something that I've been dreaming about as a little kid. And I mean, when I started this sport, I didn't really think about all the achievements I would have gotten. Like, I would have never thought in a million years. Like you said, I got 2 times for Gatorade and just my other achievements. But I'm just so grateful for everything that has come my way and just all the amazing coaches and teammates I've had along the way as well.
Speaking of coaches, Kevin Bordewig, who has had so much success on the volleyball court and on the basketball court, coaching at Washburn Rural for so many years at this point, you get to see him a lot all year round. You're on the volleyball court with him coaching. You're on, playing basketball with him coaching as well. What is your relationship like with your head coach?
I mean, outside of sports, like, we have a really close relationship. He's someone I can always count on and talk to, but when it comes to sports, it's more business type. Like, we have one goal in mind, practice, winning those state championships, like you said. And it's just he's a great coach. I've loved playing for him and just getting a feel for what he has in mind and his different, he knows a lot about the game. So just his knowledge for everything is just really great to hear.
Last thing I've got for you, Brooklyn, is looking ahead. Just recently, you signed your national letter of intent to play volleyball at the University of Kentucky, which just a couple of years ago won a national championship at the Division I level in women's volleyball. First things first, congratulations. And also, what was it about Kentucky? What was it about Lexington that really drew you in and made you want to go be a Wildcat?
No, thank you. Honestly, just the people and the coaches and the culture they have there. You look at so many schools and they're trying to recruit you, and you really don't get past of you being an athlete. Obviously, you're going to play a sport, but it kind of matters to me what they think of me as a person as well, because you're going there for a sport, obviously, but you also got to think of the academic side and how it'll help you in the future, because I'll probably only be there for 4 or 5 years possibly. And so I just got to think about beyond volleyball and beyond Kentucky and what I'm going to do and what they're going to be able to give me too as well.
There is an extremely bright volleyball future awaiting Brooklyn DeLeye, but first, she is in the midst of a phenomenal senior basketball season for Washburn Rural, averaging over 15 points and over 8 rebounds a game for the Junior Blues, and she is our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week. Brooklyn, thank you so much for taking a few minutes for us today. I know you've got a lot going on this time of year, so thank you for the time, and best of luck with everything that's to come the rest of this basketball season and with your volleyball career coming up at Kentucky.
No, thank you so much for having me.
That is Brooklyn DeLeye from Washburn Rural, our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week. If you missed any of our interview with Brooklyn or any of our other interviews, you can go check out our website, 580WIBW. That will be live coming up here at the top of the hour. Who is the best athlete you've ever seen in high school sports? Like, not just in one, well, I guess it could be in one sport in particular, but in terms of whole career or just, they jumped off the page at you so much. Who's the best one you've ever seen? Because you've covered high school in a few different places.
I've been in a lot of states. Been fortunate to see a lot, but I think about just in my time here in Topeka, Kai Thomas's career. I was fortunate all 4 years of what Kai Thomas was able to accomplish in football at Topeka High. Carly Batchelor, obviously, you talk about 3 sports stars at Washburn Rural. They've had quite a run of them when you consider what Carly Batchelor accomplished in her time at Washburn Rural. So those two, I would have to say, would be pretty high on my list. I saw a woman by the name of Jordan Hooper, who was an outstanding basketball player at University of Nebraska. Saw her play. Yeah, fittingly indeed. Saw her play in high school when I was working in Nebraska. She was from Alliance town up in northern end of the Panhandle, and they played against North Platte. Got to see her play. I think she had like 38 points. She was a remarkable athlete, no question about it. So she's on the list as well. But yeah, I mean, what Brooklyn DeLeye has accomplished is truly remarkable. It's one of those athletic careers that will live long in the memory, no doubt about it, because not just of what she's done on an individual level, but how she's elevated the teams that she's been on to the level of championship level.
Best player on a team that is going to contend for a state title again this year was the best player on a team that won a state championship in basketball last year and was the best player on a volleyball state champion as well. 6A volleyball, not an easy class to win in on the girls' side of things. Although I guess we only have girls volleyball in the state of Kansas. No, she is tremendous.
I will also say that the one, and this is not in my career as a broadcaster, but the one amateur athlete that I have seen in my life and been the most dead certain that was going to be a professional athlete someday was Greg Bird. Former New York Yankee, still trying to make a go of it in his baseball career, though injuries have really ravaged him. But I saw him as an 8th grader, and that was a different guy as a baseball player. Like you knew, with like people like that, like Christian Brown is another one that I got to see at the state tournament and had a feeling he was going to be a pretty good one. And Kevin Gosman, I also saw, he went to the same high school, played high school ball with my younger brother. So that was another one, obviously. High school kid throwing 97. You think, there's a future there too.
Yeah, pretty special. Pretty special stuff. Shout out to Brooklyn DeLeye, our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week. What a career for her at Washburn Rural, and she's not done yet. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, what worries you the most about the Eagles? We'll talk about it here on 580 Sports Talk. Now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. Thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon with us. We appreciate it so much, as always. If you missed the first hour of the show, that included recapping the Sunflower Showdown, a round of one gotta go, and our Wendy's High School Athlete of the Week, head on over to our website. That's 580wibw.com. There's a podcasts tab right in the middle of the homepage. Just hover your mouse over that. Then when a menu pops up from there, click on 580 Sports Talk, and that is where you'll find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show.
As of right now.
As of right this second. You can also head to our YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW, and you can go back and rewind the video. You don't just have to watch the stream live. You can go back in time as well and look up anything you may have missed from the show so far. Couple of lingering thoughts from the first hour of the show. One from our conversation about great high school athletes. Our guy Jeffrey on the YouTube comment says he saw Danny Manning play in high school. Yeah, decent athlete. You know, top pick in the NBA draft. Well, what was he? Top 10 pick?
No, I think he went number 1.
Did he go number 1 overall?
I think he went number 1.
Injuries really derailed Danny's NBA career. He was a solid player. He was rookie of the year.
Yeah, the ACL, right?
Yeah,
but he did. He went number 1 in 88.
Okay. And obviously, you know, maybe the greatest Jayhawk of all time. It's pretty good company to be in.
It is still wild. He got traded 1-for-1, I think, for Dominique Wilkins.
You might be correct about that. I'm actually not sure. Danny played for a few different teams when he made it to the NBA.
Yeah, he ended up, well, I mean, once you're a Clipper, you're kind of doomed to be itinerant and become a basketball wanderer at some point if you ever end up a Clipper. But I'm checking his basketball reference page right now, trying to get to his transactions. Yeah, it was for Dominique and a first-round pick, which amazing that the Hawks ever traded Dominique Wilkins. That's really what stands out about that.
Yeah, there really is. Danny Manning played for 7 different teams in his career. That's kind of crazy. That's a good player. He averaged 22 points or almost 23 points a game in 92-93, 4-time All-Star.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a pretty good career. And again, he's probably the greatest Jayhawk of all time.
Yeah.
Pretty good resume.
I mean, it's him or it's Wilt.
Yeah, it's really only one of those two. I mean, there are a lot of greats, obviously.
Yeah, everybody else is kind of playing for third historically.
Clyde LaVellette is up there. He was great.
Yeah.
Man, I'm trying to think more recently. I mean, Frank Mason's got to be in the discussion. He was the undisputed National Player of the Year.
Yeah, National Player of the Year.
They never won a championship with Frank there.
Is he the best of the last of the century to date? Is he the best of the 2000s to date? Or do you still have to put some of those guys from the 08 championship team or the 2000s above him?
It's hard to top Nick Collison, man. Nick Collison was incredible. I mean, there were a couple of guys on those teams that went to back-to-back Final Four. I mean, Heinrich is up there. Nick Collison was just a different beast. Yeah, but this will be a discussion for after the NCAA tournament when we need to fill time. What is the best Bill Self or just past 2000 KU team?
Man, we'd be on that segment right now if the Chiefs weren't in the Super Bowl, brother.
I was going to say, yeah, if Sunday's game had ended differently, then there hadn't been a 15-yard penalty on Joseph Asai, we might be having a very different show right now.
It'd be that or build your Royals bullpen for 2023.
Oh, my God.
I am so glad. That's what I told my buddy, because I grew up in Colorado. My buddies are Broncos fans, which means they don't like the Chiefs very much. So I get a lot of grief about, them. They always want to see the Chiefs lose. And I say, guys, listen, think about what's important. Your pal. And the fact that I don't have to work too hard to come up with show topics for the next 3 weeks. Think about that. You think I want to talk about the Royals right now? No. I would much rather talk about the Super Bowl.
You didn't like the Broncos growing up. Did you have any animosity toward the Chiefs or the rest of the AFC West, or just not really care?
No. I had no feelings toward the Chiefs whatsoever. Maybe pity after the Lynn Elliott game. That's about it.
Because and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you told me at one point, despite not being a Colorado fan, you were no Nebraska fan either.
Right. That was just, I was not I didn't grow up a diehard CU fan, but you wanted to see Colorado beat Nebraska because it was Colorado.
Yeah.
And they were Nebraska.
That's fair.
Yeah, you wanted to see that. But no, growing up, I had no love for the Broncos, so it wasn't like their enemies were my friends or anything like that.
That's fair.
Yeah, I didn't really have any, Joe Montana was cool, but that was
yeah.
Yeah,
I remember Montana. Yeah, that was all right. We do have plenty of Chiefs to get to this hour. We've also got our first what is wrong with you of the month of February. We will get to Tim Fitzgerald for our Azure Credit Union Wildcats wrap-up. I do want to throw this out there real quick, talking about the YouTube. Go, by the way, if you haven't subscribed yet, find us on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. I want to give a shout-out to our guy Vance, because a couple of days recently he's brought up either NASCAR news or that the Daytona 500 is coming up, and I feel bad not talking about it completely and ignoring it every time. So
neither of us are experts. I mean, you're not going to get a lot of real...
No. I spent like 2 years when I was in junior high, like really into NASCAR.
Oh, yeah, I did too.
And then
me and my brother used to buy the die casts.
Oh, that's cool.
When my younger brother.
Yeah,
and yeah, I have a very long story about going to a NASCAR Busch Series race at Pikes Peak International Raceway. And Vance, if you ever bump into me, I will tell you the entire story. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. And we just don't have time for me to lay it out on the radio right now, but it is an all-time hilarious story of somebody pushing the wrong button when they meant to play Proud to Be an American and playing a very different song about being an American.
But our guy Mark said, it's wild that we're in February now, but it's still 11 days till the Super Bowl. Usually
it is
2 days until the Super Bowl once we hit February 1st. That 18 games or 18-week schedule, man. And then Vance chimed in, 18 days till Daytona. Daytona's cool because I'm not a boxing guy. I'm not a UFC guy, but I like big fights. I like a good big event.
The big event
kind of way.
Daytona absolutely qualifies. That's the big event. That is a cool one. And I got to tell you that running the cars at the LA Coliseum is a pretty neat deal.
Yeah, that is cool.
Doing the preseason, the Clash of the Coliseum, I guess they call it. That's pretty neat setup they got there. I don't know that it's great racing. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, that's over my head.
But the visuals are spectacular.
So, no, I felt a little bad. I've seen Vance comment a few times recently about, I know he's a big NASCAR guy, so I wanted to give some love there. We do have Chiefs to get to, though. We mentioned going into the news break at the top of the hour. What is it that the Eagles do that worries you? What concerns you about the Eagles? And Matt in the YouTube comment says, with all of Kansas City's injuries, his big worry, his big concern is with how explosive the Eagles are. They put 31 points up on the 49ers this past week. Can Kansas City keep up? Can they contain Jalen Hurts and the offense? I saw a piece today that inspired me to ask, what do they do in particular that has us worried? Because, yes, we know the Eagles can score. We know they have an explosive run game, which honestly might be the most dangerous thing you could have in football right now, because the run games kind of become old hat. It's all about passing and throwing. It's such a pass-happy league. But if you can get explosive plays in the run game, that's your football market inefficiency right now, essentially. And that's what Philadelphia has. But I was wondering, what do they do to get to that point? What do they do that makes the run game work, or that makes their pass game work, that should have us concerned from a Chiefs perspective? And over at Arrowhead Report today from Sports Illustrated, our guy Jordan Foote, who we talk to every few weeks, that's where he is an editor. This was written by, and I want to get the credit right here, Marlo Ferguson over at Sports Illustrated Arrowhead Report. 5 Eagles offensive tendencies that could define Super Bowl 57. And I thought it was a very interesting piece, and it's all about how, look at what they do on 4th and short, and how the rules about pushing players now, it has become essentially a guaranteed first down for Philadelphia among other teams. The way they run weak side zone run plays, what they're able to do with the RPO game, and then the combination of their wide receivers as well. Swole Batman and Skinny Batman. I don't remember where that came from for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but it's a thing. So what is it that they do? What part of their scheme, what part of the way they get guys open, or the way they make things work worries you the most? For me, it's what they do in short yardage situations in general. So not necessarily just 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, but if Philadelphia gets to 3rd down and 3, for example, we always say, well, the whole playbook is open here. Philadelphia's playbook is built for that exact kind of situation. It's almost old school, like old school in a way, where they can do things out of the tee. They can do things with all sorts of, it almost looks like buck lateral misdirection, like we're watching 1910s football out there. They can do so many different things. The push from behind on the quarterback, obviously. That's my biggest concern, is the fact that they can go so multi-dimensional in short yardage situations. And that pertains to goal line situations as well. They have so many unique ways that they get their wide receivers open, and also their tight end, Dallas Goedert. The running backs, Kenneth Gainwell, I think in a vacuum is fine. He's not great, but he has fit what they want to do really well. They've got like their whole group of running backs are just change of pace backs. Like I don't think Miles Sanders is great. He's fine. Kenneth Gainwell's not great. He's fine. Boston Scott is like the ultimate change of pace back because he's small but also not really fast.
None of those guys are like Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley or anybody like that.
No, certainly not. So they've got all these different guys, though, and they can do so many different things with them, and they're so good up front. That's the worry for me, is the fact that they can go so multiple when they only need a few yards, and they're willing to be physical doing it. They've got a quarterback who, despite being banged up, is willing to sneak the ball. Not every quarterback is willing to say that. They can pitch it. They can hand it off. They do so many different things. That's what worries me the most.
And not only that, they're good in third and short, but they're good at getting to third and short.
Great point.
And they're not afraid of fourth and short. Like, I don't think Nick Sirianni is going to punt in this game unless he's staring at like a 4th and 25. Like, they have been so willing, one of the most willing teams in the league to go for it on 4th down. And if they're looking at 4th and 1, I don't think it matters where the football is. They're going to go for it. They're going to push Jalen Hurts across the line. They're going to keep that drive alive. Now, the discussion about whether or not the push from the back is going to be a legal play in the NFL moving forward is a discussion for the rules committee, a discussion for the offseason. And I wouldn't be surprised if ultimately something about that is changed, but they're not changing it between now and 2 Sundays from now. So that is a lethal weapon for them to be able to keep drives alive. But again, it's not just the ability to convert those situations. It's the ability to get to those situations because they're good at running the ball on 1st down, and they're good at the quick passes that allow them to be in 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5. They do a really good job of staying on schedule. And I have to believe that's going to be the plan for Philadelphia, because if you can move the ball methodically, the added bonus that you get from that is that's less time that Patrick Mahomes has the ball and less opportunity that the Chiefs offense has to score some points. So that really stands out to me as well, how multidimensional they are with the running game, the quarterback being involved in a way that is really hard to prepare for and is really not like anything Kansas City has seen this year. So a major onus in this game for the Chiefs is going to be on the guys up front. They have to be gap sound. They have to be able to win some matchups. They have to be able to hold firm against some double teams, because you know they're going to be some double teams. That, to me, will be the matchup that determines the game. To put it in a simpler way, if the game for the Eagles is about Jalen Hurts, that's a huge advantage to the Chiefs.
Agreed.
If the game for Philadelphia is about Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Hurts, then that's a big advantage for Philadelphia, because that means they're able to use their running game. They're able to stay on schedule. They're able to have 3rd and short situations, keep the ball moving, put together some 6, 7, 8-minute drives, and probably finish those drives with points. So, yeah, that to me is the biggest thing, because as much as the other side of the ball, the Eagles have been tremendous this year, as well as they play. They got 4 guys with double-digit sacks. They led the league in sacks as a team. They have 2 tremendous cornerbacks. They've got a lot of depth along that offensive line. When you look at who they've played this year, it's not exactly been a murderer's row of offenses. And the best offenses they played this year put up some numbers. Lions scored 35. The Cowboys in the second meeting scored 34. The Packers scored 33. When they were playing like good quarterbacks, they gave up some points. They gave up some numbers. They just don't have a lot of games on their schedule where they've played a team with the offense of Kansas City's caliber. And so I think that matchup is not so scary for the Chiefs. I'm not saying they're going to score 45 points or anything like that, but I think that's a matchup where Kansas City can hold their own. I think that's a matchup Kansas City can put a number up on the board that will be good enough to win. The question for me, the big questions for me are on the other side of the ball for the Chiefs. But the good news for the Chiefs is they come into this game playing as well defensively as they've played all year and tackling as well as they have all year.
Is there an element of the defense, if we keep the same premise but flip the question around, is there an area for that defense in particular that you think is especially susceptible? And it's a tough matchup against Goddard and Brown and Smith. We know that's a tough matchup. We know it is going to be tough up front for the defensive line against that offensive line, because we heard it from Matt Verderame on Monday. He said that the Chiefs might have the number 2 best defensive line and offensive line in the NFL, only behind Philadelphia on both sides of the ball. That makes it a great matchup for a Super Bowl. But is there any part of the defense that you think feels extra susceptible to something that Philadelphia does? I think you could argue, and I don't mean to just put this on Nick Bolton, because nothing is ever about one player unless it's a quarterback in football generally.
Mm-hmm.
But Bolton, as much as he had a good year and he tackled really well this year, he is still not a great side-to-side player. He is a much better front-to-back than side-to-side player. And with some of the misdirection stuff, you worry that maybe he can get caught flat-footed. And if you're putting a lot of responsibility on him, maybe that's an issue in the second level of the defense. That also, though, if that's your biggest concern, that feels like it's not a stretch, but that feels like, okay, you're probably doing pretty well in every other element if that's your biggest concern.
Right. Well, he's getting help in the tackling department from everybody else. Right. Like the tackling from the safeties has improved. The tackling from the cornerbacks has improved. You hope L'Jarius Sneed can play. He can be a factor in the running game as well. But here's the other thing that I think the maybe the most important thing the Chiefs can do to try and make this game about Jalen Hurts: get a lead. Score early and score often. If the Chiefs put down 10, 14 points on their first 2-3 drives of the game and jump out to a lead, then how does Nick Sirianni, how does Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator, Steichen, or is it a hard CH?
I think it's Steichen.
Steichen,
I think.
Okay. How do Sirianni and Steichen and Hurts, how does that change their dynamic and how they approach the game if they're behind 14-3 early, or if they get behind 17-7 late in the second quarter? Does that eliminate the running game, or do they stay with it? Do they try and no matter what, stick to that principle for the course of 4 quarters? That will be fascinating to see, because a lot of teams, I don't want to say panic, but when you're playing from behind, you're more apt to try and throw the football. So the biggest thing the Chiefs offense can do to help out their defense, go out and score and score early. Get points on that early drive, that first drive of the game, and give yourself an opportunity to get a lead and take that impact of the running game out as much as possible.
I think it's probably safe to say this: low-scoring game favors Philly, high-scoring game favors KC.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair generalization, even though the Chiefs just won a 23-20 AFC championship game. Like, I don't think the Chiefs can't win a lower scoring game.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I just think in terms of probability,
yeah, more possessions are better for the Chiefs. Like, they want to have, 10, 11 possessions, 10, 11 bites at the apple against that Eagles defense. That could be enough to score 30 plus. And we'll see if the Eagles can do that. I don't think that they can't, but I do think that their passing game is compromised a little bit by the injury to Hurts' shoulder. I don't think it's as explosive.
And I guess that's more so my point, that if you end up in a situation where the quarterbacks need to go win you the game, that it's, there's tons of possessions, or it's sometimes you just get games where there's a ton of points. The game that Philadelphia was last in the Super Bowl, that was 52? Like, there were some big defensive plays by both teams in that game, and there were good defenses. I mean, that Eagles defense was really good. Several of the same pieces that are still on the team. That Patriots defense was obviously really good. Sometimes you just have a game with a ton of points. That just happens in football sometimes. And if it comes down to your quarterback has to be the one who makes more plays than the other quarterback, who are you taking? The guy who's proven it, who's about to be named the MVP of the league, who is the best quarterback in the world and maybe is already on trajectory to be one of the best of all time, or Jalen Hurts, who had a really good year, but also is not Patrick Mahomes and is also dealing with a bum shoulder that we're pretty sure is not going to be 100% one way or the other come Super Bowl Sunday. Well, in that situation, I'm taking Kansas City. I think that's pretty obvious. And if you're not going to pick them, you either are a Chiefs hater or you call into 94 WIP. Like, that's really the only way you would see that otherwise. That's why I think if it's a lower scoring game, though, Philadelphia, I think, can do a better job of wearing you down than, say, the Chiefs do. Like, even in a low scoring game, I don't generally think of the Chiefs as a grind you down kind of team. That's by design. It's somewhat by personnel. It's
aesthetics.
Also, I mean, that's not Andy Reid. Like, when's the last time Andy Reid grinded down a game? It doesn't really happen all that often. So that's a reason why I would think the inverse would be true for Philadelphia, that in a game where it's going to come down to old school, physical, win in the trenches football, I feel like that probably favors them, because that's what they want to do, as opposed to the Chiefs. They're not an entirely finesse team, but I think they would like to play a little bit more of a finesse offense. Finesse isn't really the right word, but you know what I mean. The high-flying offense, so to speak. So that's why I think lower scoring favors Philly, higher scoring favors Kansas City. But again, someone pointed it out earlier on. I think it was our guy, Matt on YouTube. Eagles can score plenty of points. It's not like they are only going to win if it's 21 or fewer.
Right. Yeah, they're more than capable. They've got the ability, like you said, to have those explosive plays in the running game. So that's what the Chiefs have to limit. Like, there are going to be plays that they win up front. They get 6, 7, 8 yards on a running play. You just have to keep those from turning into 20, 25-yard, like field flipping running plays. The less of those you have, the better a chance you have of keeping them at a number that you're going to be able to exceed on the other side with Mahomes and company.
We've got to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk, but when we're back on the other side of this timeout, we've got the first What Is Wrong With You for the month of February, and Tim Fitzgerald joins us later on this hour. It's all coming up here on 580 Sports Talk. It's just about that time. What is wrong with you here on 580 Sports Talk? Our first What is Wrong with You of the month after we found our January champion, the meat suitcase. Oh, my God. That is our January winner. So funny. 2 new stories going head-to-head today. I will go first. We're going down to Florida. In fact, we're going to a Days Inn in Palm Coast, Florida, which is a good time to remind everyone, because I'm sure this story has come up before. The worst hotel I've ever stayed in was the Days Inn we stopped at just south of Dallas going to the Final Four in 2018. It was gross and bad, and I will never stay at a Days Inn again. Anyway, we meet the pair of Reiner Lazaro Perez and Deonli Coutinho Gonzalez, who were spotted in the parking lot behind the Days Inn in Palm Coast, spray painting a Peterbilt semi-tractor in the back corner of the lot. The hotel is just off of I-95. Someone saw this happening. They saw these 2 people spray painting a truck, and they thought, this seems wrong. I'm going to call the police. So they did. They called the Flagler County Sheriff's Office, and when deputies arrived on the scene, the 2 just dropped their spray paint cans mid-job and took off running along Interstate 95. Probably not all that smart. Gonzalez had not, she got caught pretty quickly. She didn't get too far. Her partner, Perez, did hide for 2 hours in the woods, but was caught shortly thereafter. It turns out that semi-truck tractor-trailer had been stolen mere hours earlier in Columbia County, Florida, and was valued at $280,000.
Wow.
It was a pink truck. They were trying to paint it a different color. They were trying to paint it red.
Yo, they really planned for this. They had the tape, like the painter's tape.
All over all the lights, the grill, everything.
They knew exactly what they were doing.
And they thought, no one will know this is stolen if it's a different color.
And nobody will find it suspicious that we're painting it in the back of this Days Inn parking lot.
Like, of all places, you couldn't find somewhere a little more inconspicuous for that. So that is my story for today, the spray paint couple down in Florida.
Man, they really did. They
thought they were so smart.
They did.
Some of our stories, you can tell the perpetrators, the subjects.
They had a plan.
They're like, oh, my God, we're going to outsmart the police. We're going to outsmart the Peterbilt people. We got this.
Boy, our guy Perez caught a possession of fentanyl charge.
Oh, no.
In addition to the resisting arrest without violence, grand theft motor vehicle, and felony criminal mischief charges.
Should have left that one in the woods, pal. Yeah, dig a hole, bury that.
Oh,
my God.
There's always drugs, right? When
Always.
it's Florida, there's always a drug involved. Usually it's meth, but this one it was fentanyl.
What do you have for today?
We are going to Chesterfield Township, Michigan, and we are putting 6-year-old Mason Stonehouse on blast because he was playing on his dad's phone and ordered $1,000 of food on Grubhub.
Hell yeah.
The food started coming to the family home near Detroit around 9 p.m. Saturday night, and it just kept coming. Mason's dad, Keith, was bewildered until he figured out what happened. He said, "What was going on? Why are you bringing me food?" It finally clicked with him that he let his son use his phone earlier that night, telling the TV station that Mason was going to town with the Grubhub ad. What did Mason order? Basically every food that has ever existed. Shrimp, salad, shawarma, chicken pita wraps, sandwiches, chili cheese fries.
Oh, yeah.
And multiple orders of ice cream.
There we go.
Keith's bank, Keith is the dad, sent him a fraud alert declining a $400 order of pizza. This kid ordered $400 of pizza. His father tried calling the restaurants to stop the orders once he figured out what had happened, but they told him to contact Grubhub. The leftover food was shared with neighbors and eaten as leftovers. This is the great anecdote from Keith. While all the food was being delivered and I figured out what happened, I went to talk to Mason about what he did, and this is the only part that makes me laugh, Keith told MLive.com. I was trying to explain to him that this wasn't good, and he puts his hand up and stops me and says, "Dad, did the pepperoni pizzas come yet?" I had to walk out of the room. I didn't know if I should get mad or laugh. Grubhub has offered the Stonehouse family $1,000 worth of gift cards.
No, not okay. I want cash.
Mason's parents said it will take some time before he gets his phone privileges back.
Gift cards. Get out of my face. I need the cash back. I can't buy gas with a Grubhub card.
No, I cannot. I can't pay the bills. I can't. The mortgage company comes calling, "Hey, would you like to go out for a nice meal and have it maybe delivered to your house?"
Evergy don't take gift cards. Dog.
Yo, like, I don't know how this phone business works. I really don't. Like, when you give it to your kid, like if there's a child setting you can put it on.
Yeah.
Like tablets have that, right?
Yeah.
Like I think I have a Samsung Galaxy tablet, and you could like open up like a kid's version of it where it's basically just the games and whatever apps it is you want your kid to see. I don't know if phones have that setting. I'm guessing they don't, apparently. But man, you cannot let your kid open up the Grubhub and start thinking, "Oh man, I'm going to order all this food."
Dog, that is so funny.
He ordered shawarma. Do you think he knows what that is?
I barely know what it is. I only recently learned what it is. Oh my God. Did the pepperoni pizzas come yet?
That's
what
what he was most psyched about, right? The $400 of pepperoni pizzas.
What an absolute legend. See, there's the funny thing about this story. The bigger "what is wrong with yous" to me are not, making sure that your card is not loaded up on Grubhub when you give it to your 6-year-old at bedtime. And also trying to pay these people back in gift cards.
Yeah,
I
come
need
on.
cash.
Come on, Grubhub.
Can't go out for dinner and leave the kid at home with the babysitter with a gift card. Actually, maybe you could. I was like, here, I have $100 in Grubhub cards. Maybe you could. I don't know.
Order food.
Yeah.
Order in.
I've never had to pay for one before. I don't know.
I don't think we can make a 6-year-old a What Is Wrong With You winner.
No, you're probably right about that.
But $1,000 worth of food is like it's like giving your phone to a dog.
Good thing his bank declined some of it.
Right? Yeah. His bank stepped in after the $400 worth of pizza. Not, hey, you've made 10 different takeout orders tonight. That seemed a little hinky, but we weren't sure until we got the $400 pizza order, and then we shut the whole thing down.
$200 to Baskin Robbins? Nah, you're fine. $400 in pizza? All right. Too far.
What do you think he was in, like the S category? Shrimp, salad, shawarma?
Just kept saying shrimp to himself and scrolling and pressing.
I want this. I want that. Thought it was a game. Thought Grubhub was a video game. like it was Pokemon Go. We had to catch them all.
Oh my God, that story is funny. We're gonna go with the truck trailer painters, though. They are our winners today in What Is Wrong With You. We've got to take a break. Tim Fitzgerald is up next on 580 Sports Talk. Wildcat wrap up here on 580 Sports Talk. Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com going to join us here in just a matter of moments to talk all about last night's Sunflower Showdown and just to check in on Kansas State basketball. Of course, you can find Fitz on Twitter at Life of Fitz, and you can find his tremendous work along with the entire motley crew over at GoPowerCat.com at that exact address. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. We've got Fitz on the line. How you doing, my friend?
I am well. How are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you so much for asking. Dan, how are you?
I'm great.
We're cooking, Fitz. We're doing great.
Okay, good. I'm glad. I want you guys to be happy. Daphne's happy.
She is. We can tell. Tell her we appreciate her stopping on as well. You know who's probably not doing well? John Higgins, because he sleeps for 4 minutes a day and is probably in like Guam today because he has to work a basketball game every 6 hours.
He's on those extra strength trucker uppers just to get him through to the next officiating assignment.
We'll get to the basketball in general here, Fitz, because there was a lot of intrigue in the game and the efforts on both sides of it and all that. But, man, at some point, like, I'm not even asking for accountability, but we can't have officials who are working every single day in different parts of the country. It's just not sustainable for a good product.
No, it's not. Sorry, I was closing the door. No, it's not. It's crazy. There's so many things wrong with how we're doing officiating at the NCAA level. I have some solutions. Nobody wants to listen, but that's cool. But whatever the solution is, but see, they don't see a problem. Games are getting officiated. Guys show up, gals show up, whomever shows up, and does the job. And this is what we have to deal with. This is the pool of guys and gals that are officiating games, and you don't like it, there's not much you can do because this is all we have. Well, I don't accept that, but any solution is going to involve a process of going through worse officiating, to be honest. It's, anytime you're going to bring up a bunch of new officials, they're going to have a learning curve. But the bottom line, my problem with the officiating product is that all the same guys that we think are part of the problem are the ones teaching the next generation. And a lot of showboating going on out there, and just way too many games being officiated. They've got to put a limit on, how these guys move around the country. And but you're right. I mean, you can watch these officials if you want to track them. They can be in Seattle one night. They'll stop in Austin and then be in Boston the next day. I mean, they'll work 3 games, but coast to coast. I don't care what you do for a living. That level of travel does not bring out the best in you.
No, absolutely not. It's truly, truly ridiculous. For the game itself and the actual basketball being played on the floor in between whistles, KU kept K-State at bay, at arm's length for most of the night. I do think K-State was putting up a good fight for most of the game, but it's hard to get in a flow when the game is just constantly being stopped. And really, Fitz, I thought it was the turnovers in the first half and the 15 points for KU off 10 K-State turnovers that really doomed the Wildcats. What to you was the biggest factor in why K-State was never really able to close the gap after that first 5 or 6 minutes?
Oh, it was that. I mean, it was certainly those 10 turnovers in the first half. And every time K-State, felt like they got something going, they would turn the ball over. They would miss an easy shot. Or, honestly, they'd get a call. Maybe that didn't work in their favor. But, those you can't control. The other things you can control. And, if you start worrying about things you can't control out on the floor too much, then you're going to get yourself in trouble. But, boy, they just had some opportunities, and they didn't convert them. And when you're behind by 12 at half because you had 10 turnovers in the first half and you lose by 12, I think I can figure it out myself what's wrong here. And they just weren't efficient enough. They didn't do a lot of things as well as they did in Manhattan. And honestly, KU shot the ball at a higher level than they have been, and that's hard to overcome.
Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com is our guest for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. We do it every Wednesday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz is the publisher of GoPowerCat.com. You can find him on Twitter at LifeOfFitz. You mentioned the turnovers, and that's kind of been a common theme in the games in which Kansas State has fallen victim to defeat in Big 12 play to this point. What needs to change in the second half of the Big 12 schedule for Kansas State to value the basketball better and cut those numbers down?
Yeah, I think they were making a lot of passes earlier in the year that were easier, but now that there's some scouting film out there, the angles are getting tougher. You're seeing teams pack in the lane a little bit more to make those interior passes more difficult. And honestly, one of the things that really bothers me, I don't mind a pass that might go a little bit off target and ends up a turnover. I do mind over penetrating and getting yourself into trouble, and getting yourself trapped or into a bad situation. That's a lot of it for me. Is they sometimes overdrive the ball, and you kind of are thinking, where are you going? I mean, there's no place to go. You need to get rid of this ball before you get trapped, and then they're trapped. So these are things that they'll boil out on film. Some of these are habits that's going to be a little bit hard to break. Keontae Johnson's been doing it a lot. When he's effective, it's really good, but boy, he can get himself into a pickle. I think he had 5 turnovers out of K-State's 13. So there's just some things to polish. But boy, being 6-3 at the turn in the Big 12 in this conference with the team ahead of you in Texas coming into your place, K-State's in a really good situation. If they can polish up their play a little bit, they've got a lot of their tough road games out of the way. They've been to Austin, they've been to Ames, now they've been to Lawrence. They've been to Fort Worth, if that's still a tough game with their injuries. And now they get some of these teams coming into Manhattan, and I think it's going to be a great opportunity for Jerome Tang's team.
And I think you could argue that we maybe haven't seen the best lineup for K-State in much of Big 12 play, because David Gassan's return really changes a lot of what K-State can do. It really stood out to me on Saturday after the SEC Big 12 Challenge game against Florida that Jerome Tang credited Gassan's presence in that game for helping them be a better rebounding team, even though Gassan himself only got 1 rebound in the contest. How does he change the equation for Kansas State as he gets healthier and starts to get back into the starting lineup? And how does he maybe help them match up better against some of the teams in the Big 12?
Yeah, having him back is crucial for K-State, and he looks like a guy who hasn't played in about a month. I mean, he's a little bit spotty right now. I think he'll get there. He was starting to play really good basketball, and then he got injured. And he's just the smartest of the defenders in the post. He knows how to position himself. He knows how to kind of handle bigger guys, because, honestly, big post players are going to be problems for K-State with any matchup. KU doesn't necessarily present that with the starting lineup, but there are some guys that can give troubles. And just more depth up front. I mean, they just need more bodies to be able to run through that front line. But I like him. I think he's a really smart basketball player. The thing he does the best with the people around him is he's always available for a pass. I mean, he's always got his hands ready. He's always prepared. He's got good hands. And that has helped the offense quite a bit, and certainly makes Marquise Noel look pretty good at times. He had a dump off to him against Florida that was just fabulous. So I like David Gassan's game from the very start, but it was getting really good, and now he's kind of stepped back a little bit and has to get his momentum back.
The Texas Longhorns, as you mentioned, come to Bramlage Coliseum on Saturday. Should be another outstanding crowd at the Octagon for a crucial Big 12 game, the first game of the second half of the schedule, and a chance to get on level terms with right now the solo leader in the conference. Short of scoring 116 points again, what does Kansas State have to do in this matchup to ensure a season series sweep?
If you're Vegas, what do you put the over-under at when the first game was 219?
Great question.
I don't know. I'll be fascinated to see how the two coaches approach this differently, because neither one of them could have been happy with their defense in that first match. But both offenses were so efficient. K-State was out of this world efficient in that game. Nobody was going to beat them on that night, and Texas still played a pretty good game and lost by 13 points. So it was an amazing game to watch. I've never quite seen a college game like that. And I didn't think that it was because the defense was really bad. I just thought the offenses were so incredible that the defenses looked awful. But there were some moments in that game where it kind of looked like a rec ball. Here, you go get yours. I want to go score on the other end. But I think both coaches will probably, see if they need to slow it down. But maybe if you're K-State, you want to get out and run because Texas couldn't keep up with you. Just watching how these two coaches handle this situation on Saturday is going to be really, really interesting, because so much was right, so much was wrong about that first meeting, and a lot of it unexplainable. We'll see if any of it comes back, and who knows, this game might be 52-50.
Just a few more questions for Tim Fitzgerald, publisher of GoPowerCat.com, here on 580 Sports Talk for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. Fitz is the publisher of GoPowerCat, number one source for all things insight, information, news about K-State athletics, and you can find him on Twitter as well, at Life of Fitz. Fitz, who is K-State's best player?
I think Marquise Noel is, but not on a consistent level. I think game in and game out, it's Keontae Johnson. But I mean, it's hard to deny the numbers that Marquise puts up. Now, his assist numbers were down last night in Lawrence. Some of that was because guys didn't finish plays. I mean, Naquan Tomlin missed a 4-foot finger roll and airballed it. So it's not exactly easy to get assists when guys don't finish plays. But Marquise has just been unbelievable. And as much as I love Keontae and how, both of them are essential to the success of this team, I feel like when Keontae leaves the court, K-State can still replicate some of the things it's able to do. When Marquise leaves the court, they have a drop-off. They don't have that second creator. So that's kind of how I come to that conclusion.
Final two questions I've got for you then, Fitz. We're going to go to the football side of things here. Number one, what's your initial impression of K-State's schedule for this coming season?
Well, it sucks they're not playing Oklahoma. Period.
Yeah.
I think every Big 8 school should be playing Oklahoma, and every Southwest Conference school should be playing Texas. Period. End of story. But I have no real problem with K-State's schedule. From a selfish standpoint, I'm disappointed none of the new venues are on the road trip schedule. I was looking forward to, maybe seeing someplace new, but got two teams coming in. I don't know if that means that 24 you'll be going to Orlando and other places in Houston, but or if this is a one-off schedule because of maybe they're departing in 24. We still don't know the answer to that. But it was almost an impossible task for the conference. I get it. I feel badly for Oklahoma State. They got really the short end of all this. Tomorrow's daily delivery is about this. There's 5 Texas schools in this conference, and 4 of them are former or current Big 12 schools, and they play none of those teams. They only play Houston out of the state of Texas. And on top of that, they have a Friday night home game, which ruins it as a recruiting weekend. So it's just awful. Cincinnati plays all the new teams. They're the only ones to do it. They have what's deemed to be the easiest schedule in the conference. There's no way to balance this schedule out. I've said it over and over. 14 is the worst number to schedule with, and I think the Big 12 just found out exactly why it's so difficult to make it equitable.
And final thing I've got for you, Fitz, before we let you go, it is National Signing Day. This day doesn't mean nearly as much now because of early signing day. I don't know why they split it up in 2 and they don't reform them. That's all obviously above my pay grade. Pretty quiet day for K-State as far as I was aware and from what I've seen from today. Really any sort of news on the K-State front from signing day?
No, I mean, it's all about the transfer portal guys that are being kind of released. And, other than maybe another portal addition here and there, they're pretty much done. I think they're up at their 85 or really close to it. We'll talk to Chris Kleiman in the morning, but it's kind of a shame. I mean, it moved. This was a nice, college football holiday every early February.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of fun to have a signing day. And now it's all moved into December when we're all so busy, including the coaches. So it's been, literally a case of unintended consequences. It's taken a busy time of the year and made it even more busy, and it's taken a slower time and made it less eventful. So it's unfortunate. I think the NCAA needs to review it. I have no great solution on where to move that signing day, but I understand what they're trying to do here. It's just I don't think this works. This is not working at all.
Tim Fitzgerald is the publisher of GoPowerCat.com, the ultimate source for all things K-State athletics. Head to GoPowerCat. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can also find Fitz on Twitter. His handle is @LifeOfFitz, and he joins us every Wednesday, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour, for the Azure Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. Fitz, we appreciate the time as always. Go tell Daphne we say hi, okay?
Yeah, she is very, very alert today. Don't come to the Fitzgerald house shopping for trouble because Daphne will take care of you.
We appreciate it, Fitz. We'll talk to you soon.
Good to talk to you, boys.
That is Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com. We've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines and so much more coming up in the 5 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. hour to go on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero joining you on this Wednesday afternoon. Thank you so much for spending some of your Wednesday with us. We appreciate it so much every single day. You can hit us up either on the Big O Tires text line or on YouTube with your thoughts on whatever we're talking about on the show today. Text line number, per usual, 785-272-9429. And the YouTube comment section can be found on our channel, Sports on 580 WIBW. Coming up here in the 5 o'clock hour of the show, we've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We will also get to Tom Brady in particular. We're not going to include that in headlines. We've got a segment planned for you about Tom Brady and really just what kind of means for some of the NFL going forward. It's not like I'm not dying to talk about Tom Brady himself, but Dan also has some strong thoughts about whether or not he's actually retired. So we will indeed get to that.
We're going to see. We're going to see. I did this last year. I said a bunch of flowery stuff about how great Tom Brady was and we shall never see his like again and all these very nice things. And then he made us all fools because he came back like 2 months later to prove Adam Schefter wrong and blow up his marriage. What's the worst thing that happens if he unretires his time? He can't get re-divorced.
No. No, he really can't. Man, his ex-wife posted there are some things where you don't have to use like intense language to get an intense point across.
Mm-hmm.
Gisele Bündchen saying she wishes him the best and whatever comes next in his life, in your life.
The statement was wishing you only wonderful things in this new chapter of your life. And that your hits like a hammer, man.
Yeah, I would rather if I was Tom Brady, I would rather she just not say anything.
Right?
Like, don't text. Don't tweet at me. You just leave me alone.
Don't put anything on Instagram.
Oh, man. So we'll get to some NFL news and notes coming up in just a little bit. First things first, though, let's get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines. They are brought to you by our good friends at Blue Dot of Kansas. Whatever your heating, cooling, plumbing needs are, let our friends at Blue Dot know. You can find them online at blue.kansas.com. First headline for me today, we talked about it just briefly with Tim Fitzgerald last hour. It's National Signing Day for college football, which at this point in time, honestly, is a bigger deal at lower levels and for smaller schools than it is at the Power 5 level.
It is. Like today's a big day for Washburn and
yes.
Fort Hayes and Emporia. Yeah.
Huge day, in fact. And if you missed it, speaking of that, we will direct you to our website and to YouTube. The guys on Mic'd Up spoke with Craig Schurig, head coach of the Washburn Ichabods, earlier on today about the Washburn University signing class and about the upcoming Division II season, spring practice, all of that. You can find that at our website, 580 WIBW, as well as on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. Just go find the live stream, the recorded stream anyway, from Mic'd Up earlier on today. For KU and for K-State, today was mostly about transfers and walk-ons. I mean, that was the big news today that the players signed. Keegan Johnson, for example, at Kansas State, wide receiver transfer from Iowa. He officially signed today. Same can be said for players including Javon Banks, who is a defensive lineman. Want to get all the full list of names here for the players who did sign for K-State today. But again, because we're starting with them because, well, they just won the Big 12.
I have the Kansas list while you find the K-State list.
Okay.
Kansas welcomed the following players. Most of these are high school, so like preferred walk-ons.
Yes.
They had Noah Barber, young man from Blue Valley North, Cole Ballard out of Westfield High in Indiana, a quarterback, Dylan Mong, a tight end from Shawnee Mission East, Carson Morgan, a running back from Bentonville West in Arkansas, Ezra Vedral from Creighton Prep in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm guessing maybe brother of
Noah's
Noah
brother?
Vedral?
Cousin or something? Because I saw that name and I thought, well, hold on a second.
Yeah,
here. They went to different high schools, but it might be.
Yeah, it very well might be. TJ Cruz, quarterback from Christ Prep Academy here in Kansas. Grady Seifert, defensive tackle out of Beloit, Kansas. Jack Schneider, wide receiver from Blue Valley West. Hunter Luke, wide receiver from Westlake High, Carroll Westlake in Texas. Israel Moses V, wide receiver out of the state of Minnesota. Isaiah Coppage, big-time player, wide receiver out of Bishop Miege. Lance Bassett, defensive tackle from Lawrence High, currently playing basketball for the Lawrence Lions. We saw him at the TIT 2 weeks ago. And Jason Brittingham, also from Lawrence High, a defensive end. So the thing that is notable about that Kansas list, again, we'll have the Kansas State list in just a second.
there are a lot more Kansas kids on that Kansas list than you're used to seeing. Grady Seifert in particular, defensive tackle out of Beloit, been a standout player at Beloit his entire career. Like if you follow high school football in the state of Kansas more than just like the school in your backyard, if you follow it as a going concern, that's a name you know. He's been a standout at Beloit. He was a standout as a junior. He was a standout again as a senior in the trenches. That is the kind of kid that you think about, and you think about, oh yeah, he'll end up at K-State. Like you don't associate the small town Kansas lineman with the University of Kansas in the same way that you associate it with Kansas State. So obviously a concerted effort being made here by Lance Leipold and his staff to get some more Sunflower State flavor on the roster. And I think that's worth noting and probably worth appreciating.
No, it absolutely is. And look, it wasn't that long ago when, KU would have taken walk-ons for grade purposes from anyone, anywhere. But showing interest in local kids is a big deal. And I think it's important to note, too, Lance Leipold said multiple times over the last couple of years. In fact, right before this year's matchup with K-State, he said how much he respects Chris Kleiman and what K-State as a program is and how they've built it and maintained it. And he has essentially said, without using these exact words, if they can do it, why can't we? Like if Kansas State can get these kids from the state of Kansas that walk on and still contribute, whether it's a small role or they eventually get put on scholarship and become contributors, whatever, why can't we do that? And this is a push in that direction, and that's a positive. By the way, the only additions that I have for Kansas State, it's the 4 transfers out of the portal. Defensive lineman Javon Banks, who's a transfer from Mississippi State. Treshawn Ward, running back from Florida State, who, by the way, he was a 3-star high school prospect, 4-star transfer. You don't see that very often. Usually it's the other way around. Higher prospect in high school than the transfer portal. So Ward is a big get for Kansas State. Marcus Siegel, who is a cornerback from North Dakota State, natural fit there. And Keegan Johnson, who I already mentioned, the wide receiver from Iowa. At this point, I feel as though it's hard because I understand why there are 2 signing days because of the portal and because of the way things work and when coaches come and go now. I understand all that. But like at the Power 5 level, why do you even have this day? Like, does it really mean anything? It feels like it should either be you have the day in December or you have the day in February, and that's it. It seems redundant to have both. But again, smaller schools, you're looking at your smaller G5 programs, and you're certainly looking at your Division II level schools. This is still a big day. I almost feel like you should just get rid of the early signing day. And honestly, it probably would benefit programs and make fans and players happier too, because I think you would see, not entirely, but I think you would see fewer coaches who get out of Dodge immediately. That regular season's over, I got a new job, I'm out. I think you would see more coaches stick around through bowl games. Not entirely, not across the board, but now in an era where, well, I have to leave immediately because the new school wants me in ASAP because of the portal and because of early signing day and all that. I think it has created an environment where you really can't stick it out.
No, I agree.
I just think it would be better. I think programs in general, holistically, would be better off just putting it back in February. February 1st or first Wednesday of February is National Signing Day. That is it.
And I think you'd find not just a lot of media members and fans, but I think you'd find a lot of coaches who agree with you.
Yeah.
That it needs to go back to just being a one-day event.
Well, it's a different type of pressure, too, to be able to get regular season's over and immediately you got to seal the deal with 25 kids. That would make more sense to me at the very least. But those are your updates from National Signing Day for K-State and KU. Pretty quiet days on both fronts. KU a little bit busier than K-State, but again, nothing new, no major flips or anything. In terms of actual news from signing day, there was a little information out there that is significant on a national standpoint. Jaden Rashada, if you pay attention to college football recruiting as a whole, it was a whole big deal with him. He was committed to Miami, then he was committed to Florida. Some of the numbers for NIL agreements for him were just outrageous to the point where
ranging into the 8 figures.
Which
Come on.
I don't think was ever going to happen.
No.
Realistically. So instead of going to either Florida or Miami, he ended up at Arizona State today, which is probably a better fit at that point. Low 5-star, high 4-star caliber player, plays his high school football out there. His dad played at Arizona State. Seems like a good fit. Also, a player that I think is fascinating. He's listed as an athlete. Is it Nichols?
I think it's Nicholas.
It is Nicholas. Okay. Nicholas Harbor. It's Nyckaoles. I had heard it multiple ways. I think it's Nicholas. Thank you. He is a 5-star athlete. He is a monster of a human being. He is gigantic, and he is also quite literally an Olympic caliber sprinter to the point where he is going to play tight end at South Carolina. That's where he committed today instead of defensive end. If he wanted to commit to defensive end with his size and speed, with a little more weight, he probably projects in a few years to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Like, that is the kind of athletic monster that he is. But he wants to prepare for the Paris Olympics in 2024.
Yeah.
So he is going to play on the offensive side instead, where he is not nearly as highly regarded as a prospect. But if you're South Carolina, you're an SEC school, you say, okay, you know what? We need dudes because we're in the same division as Georgia and the same conference as Alabama. And when they change their schedule, they're going to play those West schools more often. We've just got to get as many dudes as possible. Offense, defense, we don't care. Bring that guy in. That's a big get for South Carolina, but he is a name to pay attention to because he is like, what is his official measurement? He's like 6'7" and runs. He'd be one of the fastest players in the SEC. It's absurd. And he wants to participate in the Olympics in 2 years or 1 year now, year and a half.
Yeah, year and a half. First headline for me, the Blue Dot of Kansas headlines for this Wednesday. We got some NFL news and notes that will go around the league here a little bit. The Dallas Cowboys fired offensive coordinator Kellen Moore last weekend. Moore, of course, quickly landed on his feet. He's the new offensive coordinator for the Chargers. The Cowboys have found their play caller for the 2023 season. It's Mike McCarthy. Jerry Jones confirmed today that McCarthy will be the franchise's first head coach to call plays since Jason Garrett in 2012, and that McCarthy will run a version of the West Coast offense he used as head coach of the Green Bay Packers. It will be the first scheme change that Dak Prescott has had to go through in his career with the Cowboys. It's wild, isn't it?
This is the reverse of how it usually works with head football coaches when they know they're about to be a dead man walking, right? Usually it's, I'm giving up play calling duties.
Right.
I will focus more on my other responsibilities and we'll let my offensive coordinator call plays.
It is. It's the exact opposite with McCarthy, isn't it? It's, hey, yeah, you're in charge now. So if this goes left, you're gone.
He called plays for a long time in Green Bay. He actually did that a couple of times in Green Bay, gave up and then took back play calling.
Mm-hmm.
And they won a lot of games. His quarterback was also Aaron Rodgers. Dak Prescott's not quite Aaron Rodgers.
No.
I don't know, man. I don't think this is going to work. I think McCarthy's a dead man walking. I think he's a lame duck. I think he's got one more year and he's going to get canned.
In other news, we still don't have a firm injury update or a further injury update on what Brock Purdy will do with regards to his injured UCL in his right throwing elbow. But we do know one quarterback he's probably not going to be competing with for a job at any point in 2023. Kyle Shanahan made it clear on Wednesday that Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers are going to go their separate ways. He was asked directly if there was any scenario in which he could see Garoppolo return to San Francisco in 2023. Shanahan said, quote, "No, I don't see any scenario of that." Speaking of quarterbacks, Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa has finally cleared the concussion protocol more than 1 month after entering it.
Thank God.
Did not know that you remained in the concussion protocol after your season ended, but that is certainly good news. Of course, Tagovailoa suffered 2 documented concussions this past season, the most recent one coming on Christmas Day. So he spent a month in the concussion protocol and has now finally cleared it. Speaking of the Miami Dolphins, there had been a report over the weekend that they were close to hiring defensive coordinator Vic Fangio to their coaching staff. But now that Sean Payton appears set to be the coach in Denver, perhaps there is a bidding war There are reports that both the Dolphins and the Broncos are negotiating with Fangio to try to bring them on board. Fangio, of course, was the head coach of the Broncos from 2020 to 2021 and had previously had success as a defensive coordinator in lots of different places, has a previous relationship with Sean Payton. And there was lots of talk early on in the Broncos coaching search that if they hired Payton, Fangio was going to be his choice as defensive coordinator. But there had been a report on the weekend that Fangio was going to Miami, that was done and dusted.
Mhm.
So now it appears that both teams may be in a bidding war for a defensive coordinator that is a hot commodity, even after sitting out 2022.
There's also a rumor out there that the Minnesota Vikings are waiting to officially make their new defensive coordinator dealings final because they might be waiting out Ejiro Evero, of the Denver Broncos, who knows where he's going to go. Another hot commodity at defensive coordinator, although I imagine he will not be staying in Denver. I guess it's possible, though.
I mean, he could. Yeah, I mean, if Fangio decides, hey, I gave Miami my word, sorry, Sean, I'm going to go to Miami, then Peyton could probably do worse than keeping a guy on who has a previous relationship with all of his new players.
Oh, he certainly could do worse. Certainly could do worse than that. Next headline for me. This is from the Big 12 meetings coming up this week. In fact, they're meeting tomorrow at the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport Grand Hyatt Hotel. It's a very long hotel name. Thank you to Dennis Dodd, though, for the details from CBS Sports, friend of the program. A few different things are on the agenda for the Big 12 meetings. That includes, notably, the candidacy of Gonzaga as an affiliate member or a full member non-football of the Big 12. Here is what Dennis Dodd wrote about this for CBS Sports. Basketball typically brings in 20% of the value of any media rights deal. That's why football is much more important, and it's why no Power 5 school has a basketball-only member. But this is Gonzaga, a national power, and this is Commissioner Brett Yormark, who is looking to make his mark in a new role and has been pursuing the school as a basketball-only addition. This is talking about revenue sports. I would imagine this also would include Gonzaga's non-basketball teams, although honestly, if you were willing to make it work, if you're Gonzaga, you might say, hey, we'll do it for basketball, but nothing else. And I don't think the Big 12 would complain about that, honestly.
No, I don't think they would either.
Like, if you're KU or K-State baseball, do you really want to go from, hey, we got the Sunflower Showdown, and then we're going to Spokane the week after? No, I can't imagine anyone would want that. A person familiar with media rights deals told CBS Sports, quote, I would assume if the Big 12 wanted Gonzaga, they would have Gonzaga. Dodd, however, then adds, maybe because on the Gonzaga side of things, the decision is said to be largely up to Coach Mark Few.
That's interesting.
That is very interesting.
That is his call.
If you were Mark Few, do you think he would want that? Part of me says yes.
Yeah.
Part of me also says, why mess up a good thing?
Well, there's two ways that Gonzaga can gain the respect of the people that don't respect it yet, which, like, if you don't respect the Gonzaga basketball program and what they've done over the last 20 odd years, like that's a you problem at this point.
Agree.
But there's only two things that they can do to silence the haters, if you will. One of those things is win a national championship, which they've come very close to doing, but have not actually done. The other thing to do is to join a conference that would allow them to play on a more regular basis some of the best programs in the country, which their hands are tied by their conference schedule presently. Like, you can try and squeeze in Texas, and you can get Baylor in there. You can get some other, West Coast powers in your non-conference schedule. But at the end of the day, when people start paying attention to college basketball in January and February and March, you're playing Pepperdine.
And you're often not on TV. You're on TV if you play two teams in your league. If you play BYU, who's not going to be in your league anymore,
right,
or if you play St. Mary's.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're randomly on Bally Sports Kansas City. I don't know if you've noticed this. I have noticed this as a cable subscriber.
No, because I don't get Bally Sports.
That's right. But Bally Sports,
YouTube TV user.
Bally Sports Kansas City is showing me a lot of West Coast Conference basketball lately, like at night.
Weird.
I have watched a lot of Pepperdine games.
That's
not
kind of
very
cool for you. Well,
yeah,
they
they're not very
suck,
good. It's my dad's alma mater. And check in on the Waves. Michael Porter Jr.'s brother plays for them. One of them.
Is that where Jonte ended up?
No, not Jonte.
He's too
No,
old for that. No, who
don't remember the name of this brother actually.
did Jonte leave Missouri at some point? I feel like
he's gone pro. Like he's done. Yeah,
transfer I meant, but no, I guess he just left.
No, I do not remember the name of this Porter sibling, but he plays at Pepperdine. Lorenzo Romar is their coach, and they're very bad. They're quite stinky. But yeah, we get a lot of West Coast Conference basketball at Bally Sports Kansas City. So shout out to anybody out there who's been watching any of that, like I have. You don't get that recognition, you don't get that respect, and I guess that's the final frontier for Gonzaga basketball at this point, is just earning the widespread respect. I mean, I wouldn't chase respect of people who aren't going to respect you regardless, personally. But that may be how they look at it. That's the final frontier. We get in a league that allows us to play the heavies in the college basketball world for our entire schedule, and not just for a month and change while nobody's paying attention before we get a home and home with Portland.
I get it, man. I would completely understand from each perspective wanting to make it happen. I can also understand not wanting to make it happen. But if there was any commissioner in all of sports right now who would make a decision that bold, it's Brett Yormark, right? I mean, I can't see like Jim Phillips doing something bold with the ACC. The Pac-12 is a nightmare right now. The other Big Ten and SEC wouldn't do something. Even most small conferences wouldn't do something that bold. Brett Yormark, though, absolutely the kind of guy who would do that.
Javon Porter.
Porter.
Also, former UCLA star George Zidek's son plays for Pepperdine.
Oh, good to know. What is the Waves record this year?
They were 7-15 last I saw it. Let me.
That's bad.
Yeah, they are now 7-16. They got run off the floor by Loyola Marymount the other night. That game was on TV.
I do wish I got Bally though, because I would watch that stuff and I would say from my phone, from the sportsbook app of your choice, give me not Pepperdine.
Bet Pepperdine overs. I'll tell you what, they score some points, but they also give up some points.
So we don't have a name for this. We should come up with like the fun index or something. Bart Torvik actually has a metric for that. But we have a couple of different times in the office, you, Fulton, and I, just gone to the KenPom numbers and sorted by adjusted offense and looked for teams with a really small offense number and a really big defense number. Like Missouri fits the qualifications this year. They are 5th in adjusted offense, 180th in adjusted defense. Mm-hmm. Like the most fun teams in the country. Toledo, they are the national champs in this year. They're ranked 15th in adjusted offense, 309th in adjusted defense. There's not playing on that end of the floor.
Pepperdine is equal opportunity stinky. They are 188th in adjusted offense and 189th in adjusted defense.
That's bad.
185th overall in the KenPom. One spot below Stetson out of the Atlantic Sun. Stetson is 69th in the country in adjusted offense. Nice. They are 317th in adjusted defense.
If you don't want good basketball, but you want fun basketball, that's what you should be looking for.
Like Detroit Mercy. I think they probably stopped putting them on. Well, no, maybe they are still putting them on TV because they got the kid who's chasing the scoring record.
Antoine Davis.
Yeah, Antoine Davis.
Who flirted with transferring to K-State. Remember that?
Yeah, he did. Detroit Mercy is 72nd in offense, 345th in defense. Their whole reason for existing this season is get Antoine Davis a scoring record. They're basically playing Paul Westhead ball out there. Like the mid 80s Nuggets. God bless them.
It's like almost Grinnell ball. Like, yeah, go shoot. Don't worry about defending. Just go score. Go get yours. That's essentially what they're doing. Any other headlines for you?
No, that's good.
With that, then we'll take a timeout. Big thanks to our pals at Blue Dot for sponsoring our 580 Sports Talk headlines. You can visit them online at blue.kansas.com. Coming up next, Tom Brady's retired, or is he? We'll talk about it here on 580 Sports Talk. We're back on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you on a Wednesday afternoon, 5:33. Thank you so much for joining us today. Want to get to some thoughts from the YouTube comment section. Sports on 580 WIBW is where you can find us live streaming the show and all the archives of our old recorded live shows. From our guy Mark in the YouTube comments, spray painting anything regarding our What Is Wrong With You story winner for today reminds me of the NWO.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
100%.
1,000,000%.
That's that's right in my nostalgia wheelhouse right there.
I wish I had been around for the NW. Like, I can go back and watch it. I mean, you can find that stuff anywhere now, but I would have been all over that when I was growing up had I been old enough. But I was born in 1994, so my parents weren't exactly having me watch the NWO when I was born.
I did not play high school basketball where I went to high school. We were the Wolves, and our high school basketball team used to warm up to the NWO Wolfpack theme. And
That's
it was
awesome.
The dopest thing you've ever seen.
That is so freaking cool.
Very cool.
So yes, appreciate everyone who's jumping in the YouTube comment section. Wow, I made that one word, Uments.
The Uments.
The Uments.
That's good.
I'm gonna pitch that to Google.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll give me a little cut. They'll rebrand it. Tech companies are always rebranding things. That's a free one. Well, no, if you're gonna pay me, then please pay me, Google. Tom Brady retired this morning. Very simple retirement announcement. He just said, "Hey guys, look, I already did the one big grandiose retirement. You only get one of those. So instead, I'm just sitting here on the beach telling you that I am retiring from the NFL. Thank you to everyone."
Sitting on the beach alone by myself.
Notably without my wife
or my children.
I've said this before, but I know people from a football perspective do not ever feel bad for Tom Brady. And honestly, nor should you. But on a personal level, like, if my wife left me, I would be devastated. My life would be over. Like, I'd be so miserable forever.
Yeah.
It just sucks. And like, Giselle is on Twitter. Enjoy whatever comes next in your life. Like, I'd delete my social media. I'd throw my phone in the ocean.
Yeah.
To be fair, Tom is pretty good at destroying phones.
Be like Joe Bluth walking around with the sad piano music from Charlie Brown just the rest of the day after reading that. Yeah, that would ruin the day completely. A lot of conspiracy theories about the abruptness of his retirement announcement, because he did it a year ago yesterday, I think was the first time that he retired. So he retired today, and there are people theorizing that there are two related pieces of news that have broken in the last 24 hours that contributed to this. One of them being that Tua Tagovailoa is out of concussion protocol, suggesting that he will be the Dolphins quarterback next year. And
his brain isn't literally pudding.
And the other being that Sean Payton is going to coach a team that has an established starting quarterback in Russell Wilson in Denver. So the theory being that if he was going to play again, if Tom Brady was going to play next year, it was going to be either for Sean Payton or in Miami. And when both of those doors closed, Tom Brady chose door number 3 and just threw together a retirement video. I don't know how much I believe that, but I also don't know how much I believe that he's really retired, because I felt last year like he was.
Yeah.
I felt last year like, all right, he has given everything he can to the game. He's got absolutely nothing left to prove to anybody. Retiring while he can still play. This makes all the sense in the world. So long, Tom Brady. You're one of, if not the best to ever do it. It made a certain level of sense. And then he 2 months later decided that he would come back, and he came back through the dissolving of his marriage and family life, and through a season in which the Buccaneers kind of crumbled to dust around him. They were not a good team. They were not an enjoyable team. They were not a well-coached team. But Brady still played pretty all right. Like, he wasn't peak Tom Brady.
He also wasn't the reason that they were stinky.
He certainly wasn't. But, like, in the moments where greatness was required of him, like the 2-touchdown comeback to beat the Rams, or the touchdown drive with 3 seconds to play to beat the Saints, that dramatic comeback, or the game with the NFC South on the line against the Panthers where he threw for 423. when greatness was required of Tom Brady, he showed that he still had some of that in him.
Mm-hmm.
And it surprises me that he is walking away when he knows he can still get to that level as a player. Because he has said many times before, Tom Brady has, that he wouldn't retire until he sucked. And whatever you think of Tom Brady and whatever you saw, like certainly the Buccaneers were a slog and they were not particularly a good football team. But Tom Brady doesn't suck. Like Tom Brady would be an upgrade for teams even going into next season. And I think there is a team out there. Don't know who, but I think there is a team out there that would make Tom Brady an offer that would pull him out of retirement again and turn him into this generation's answer to Brett Favre or George Foreman or Roger Clemens or whatever analog you want to use of an athlete who just can't leave the game alone. I don't think he's done. He's got nothing to, this sounds so bad. I feel bad saying what I'm about to say. He's got nothing to go home to. And if he can still be great, why not go be great for somebody?
I think this is, and I've wanted to be careful for the last year of really delving into the personal life stuff with Tom Brady because it does suck just from a human level, and I wouldn't want people digging into my life and coming up with rumors and whatnot. But honestly, given all the off the field stuff, which is obviously true, it's less so Brett Favre. It's more so Randy the Ram Robinson. Like his life is falling apart because he can't give it up. And I get it. When you've dedicated, he's 45 years old and 24 of those years, he's been an NFL player. That's insane. That's truly, truly insane. And to the point where stuff off the field is falling apart, he just can't give up that life, that dream, that grind.
And if he were the type that could give it up, if he were the type that could let it rest, he wouldn't be Tom Brady. He wouldn't be what we've seen over the last 24 years. There are quarterbacks, athletes who are great because they have the manifestly the manifestly obvious physical gifts. And you have athletes who are great because they are consistent for a very long period of time. And then you have the athletes who are great because they are serial winners. They are around winning. They contribute to winning. And the Venn diagram, the portion of the Venn diagram with all three of those is really, really small.
Yep.
And in football, he's it. I mean, he's the one who's in it. He is the one who has broken the curve when it comes to how we judge quarterbacks, how we judge players in the game for how much they win, in much the same way that Michael Jordan broke the curve in the NBA. And now we cannot compare greatness beyond Michael Jordan because Jordan was great and great for a long time. Oh yeah, and a serial winner, just won everything all the time. Brady is that guy. He has broken the curve in that way. And so I don't think you get to be that. And I mean, look, you look at Michael Jordan's personal life and his relationships with teammates and friends and former friends.
Not exactly. And family.
And family. Yeah,
not exactly normal.
Like you have to forsake something to become this, I think is the lesson that we learned from Tom Brady and the lesson that we learned from Michael Jordan too, is that there are things you have to place less importance on to pursue that level of greatness, almost a level of perfection. And whether or not it's worth it is a question only they can answer. But that's why I'm surprised that now is the point at which Tom Brady would say, yeah, I'm good. I'm tapped out. After a unsatisfying 9-8 season, now where he can maybe pick a better situation for himself than a situation he was clearly tiring of in Tampa Bay. Maybe he can go play for Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas, an offensive coordinator that he has some familiarity with and presumably some trust in. Maybe there's another opportunity for him, another challenge out there, an opportunity maybe in New York to go play his old boss, Bill Belichick, twice and show him that he's still got something left in the tank, even as he's fully into his mid-40s.
Maybe he'll try to prove he can literally do anything and he'll play for Daniel Snyder and win. You didn't think I was great? I'm going to take this team to the playoffs. I'm going to win a playoff game with Dan Snyder's team. But on a serious note, I think he's going to be done. And I will say this, if indeed he is done, because that's the information we have in front of us now, that to me guarantees Aaron Rodgers is playing next year. There is no discussion. And I know I don't mean to make this like, hey, look at my thing, but I do believe if you're Aaron Rodgers, you really want to be number 2 in Hall of Fame inductions next to J.J. Watt and on one side of you and Tom Brady on the other. You really want that shine on other people. I don't think he is as egotistical as people make him out to be. I also don't think he's totally altruistic either. He's playing next year. As long as Tom Brady's retiring this year, Rodgers is playing next year. You can take that to the bank.
It's a great point.
We've got to take a time out here on 580 Sports Talk. When we come back on the other side of this break, Dan and I each have a couple of college basketball bets you might want to keep an eye on tonight. That's next on 580 Sports Talk.
Hey, it's Matt here with
and Dan back with you, wrapping up 580 Sports Talk on this Wednesday afternoon. Last night, by the way, I'm sure you saw this because I imagine ESPN Plus put him on TV a ton, and also he got multiple ovations at the game. Travis Kelce was in the house at Allen Fieldhouse.
Yes, he was.
Went into the locker room and talked to the KU team after the fact and said, hey, one's good, but two is better, so go win another one. That's what the Chiefs are trying to do as well.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, Travis Kelce and Bill Self have a relationship. Self said, he's like, oh, we're not boys, but we've gotten to know each other and we get along, and we welcomed him in, and he's around, comes to a few games a year. And there are pictures out there you can find pretty easily on social media of him at a couple of different Lawrence well-known establishments, including the Wheel and including a local nightclub known colloquially as the Hawk, where he was pictured with Grady Dick. So that's what was going on in Lawrence on a Tuesday night. If I went out to a bar and I saw Travis Kelce and I was a college student, I'd probably lose my mind.
Surely Travis Kelce bought a round of Shirley Temples for Grady Dick and his other freshman friends.
Oh, I'm sure. He cannot, of course,
imbibe legally.
No, he cannot do that.
A nice Shirley Temple, perhaps a Roy Rogers, if he's more into
something like that.
Yeah.
college basketball action going on tonight. I don't believe there is a Big 12 game on tonight.
Yes, there is. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, Bedlam.
And between the Big 12 and some other action around the country, Dan and I each have a couple of best bets. Since you've got the Big 12 action, I will let you go first.
I do. So Oklahoma State is at Oklahoma tonight. Oklahoma is a 3.5-point favorite. I don't love the spread. Oklahoma State took care of Oklahoma in Stillwater earlier this year. I know Oklahoma just ran Alabama off the court. Might be a letdown spot for them. I don't love the spread there, but I do love Caleb Boone's total points prop. It's a 12.5 right now. Boone has gone over 12.5 points in 6 of his last 7 games, including against Oklahoma in the first meeting. He had 15. I think Caleb Boone goes over 12.5 points tonight.
I think that's a good number. I definitely think that's a good number. What was your SEC action tonight as well?
Tennessee, Florida tonight. Tennessee, one of the best teams in the country. I just saw Florida on Saturday. Again, maybe some recency bias, but they were one of the worst shooting basketball teams I have ever witnessed in person in my life of covering or watching college basketball. Tennessee only favored by 4.5. That seems like too small a number for the dramatically better team. Tough turnaround for Florida. The old East Coast to Manhattan, back to Gainesville swing. That's kind of tough. I think Florida's going to have a lot of problems with Tennessee's backcourt, and I think Tennessee covers that 4.5-point spread.
That's odd. What?
The number opened at 5.5, and it went down to 4.5.
That's interesting. I don't understand why that would be. I've got some East Coast basketball for you for my best bets of the day. 2 games are already going on, and we were hosting the show and didn't really have a chance to say, hey, by the way, jump on Xavier minus 3.5. Why does the Big East tip at 5:30 Central Time? That drives me nuts.
When they can get on screen, I guess.
Apparently. So come on, FS1, help them out. 2 games that have not tipped off yet, though, that I would put a little interest in. One from the Big East. The line's at 6.5 right now. I took it at 6 a little bit earlier on. Marquette favored over Villanova. Villanova sucks. They're not good. Marquette is good. I don't normally trust Shaka Smart. That's why I liked it with an extra 0.5 point. But I got Marquette minus 6.5 because they are legit. From the Atlantic 10 as well. How about some mid-major ball for you? Richmond favored by 4.5 over the Bonnies of St. Bonaventure. The Bonnies were real good last year. They returned from 2021. They returned 5 starters last year. Then they ended up in the NIT because they really disappointed. Then they lost everyone. They lost like 95% of their production, including 2 kids who transferred to Iowa State, including Oshuniyi. They're not very good. And they just are coming off of a big win. So give me the Richmond Spiders over the Bonnies in some A10 action coming up tonight. Is Baylor still in the race in the Big 12?
2 losses back, and they got to hurdle a bunch of teams. That's the biggest problem for Baylor. Normally, I wouldn't say that a team only 2 games out of first at the midway point is out of it, but there's a big traffic jam in front of them. That's the hard thing for them, is they're going to have to surmount not just 1 or 2 teams, but 5 teams.
I think they are still alive. We played earlier. One's got to go from the top 5 in the league right now. I think I will go as far as to say, and I don't think Baylor is going to win the league. I think Baylor has a better chance to win the league than Iowa State. Maybe that's just reputation.
I don't necessarily disagree with you there. However, Baylor's road games left: TCU, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State.
TCU, Kansas. Okay.
So yeah, they got to go to Fort Worth. That's 10 days from now. Maybe Mike Miles is back for that game. They got to go to the Fog on a Saturday afternoon. And then 3 days later, they're at the Octagon. They still got to play Texas and Iowa State again. Like, they've already lost to Texas. That's a tough slate for the Baylor Bears.
Yeah, it is.
You're being accused of anti-Scott Drew bias on the Big O Tires text line, which you...
Here's what I will say about that. I hate Scott Drew. I do not like him. I don't like his teams. I just know they have been good. Begrudgingly, they have been good. Still to this day, probably my journalistic claim to fame, if you can call it that, or my proudest actual journalism moment of my life was my senior year of college, going down to Tulsa and covering the regional down there. And asking him in a press conference, why did you go to the KU locker room? And then him all jovially, Big 12 love. And I wanted to show him some respect. God, it just drives me nuts. Svi had to say, who is that? Who is that guy?
Genuine, though. That's
him.
who Scott Drew is. That's not phony. With other coaches, that would read as very phony. And
I can see why Jerome Tang was his right-hand man. I can absolutely see why those two are such a good connection, because everything they do is earnest almost to a fault.
Yeah.
I can see that.
There's an earnestness and a sincerity and a goodness about them as people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Drew has a little more goody two-shoesness to him than Tang does, though.
I think that's probably what appealed about him when Baylor hired him, considering where they had been at the program.
Yeah. Shout out Dave Bliss. Actually, don't.
No
shout out.
No shout out. Negative shout out Dave Bliss.
We got to take a break. The final words next on 580 Sports Talk. Wrapping up 580 Sports Talk with the final word first. Mark, shout out to you in the YouTube comments agreeing. No Scott Drew love here. Dan, your final word.
Just saw this from Jeff Darlington, ESPN's NFL writer, talking today to Patrick Mahomes about the legacy of Tom Brady and mentioning to Mahomes, he tweeted this, that it's pretty surreal to think one day we might cover his retirement the way we covered Brady today. Mahomes' response, quote, "You've got like 15 to 20 years. You've got some time." Patrick Mahomes is 27 years old. It's wild to think of him still playing quarterback 15 years from now. But if Tom Brady is the roadmap for Mahomes and his generation, well, I look forward to seeing Mahomes and the rest of his quarterback generation being great well into their 30s and perhaps even into their 40s. If that's Brady's lasting legacy as a quarterback, along with all the winning, it's a pretty great one.
Final word for me, no matter how mad you are now or ever have been about anything, you've never been as mad as Urban Meyer is. When asked about his tenure in Jacksonville in 2021 and how they turned it around in 22, Urban Meyer today said, quote, "They have a lot of different players from when I was there. They did a good job in free agency." Big mad, always will be mad. We're back tomorrow from 3 to 6 for 580 Sports Talk. For Dan, I'm Brendan. We'll talk to you then.